Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee for Thursday, October 20th, 2022 to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item is adoption of the agenda. Need a motion to
Romano
adopt.
adopts the agenda.
Support Van Sickle.
Moved by Romano, supported by Van Sickle. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 10-0.
Next item is approval of minutes dated October 18th, 2022. Need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve Van Sickle.
Moved by Van Sickle, supported by Zinner. Any corrections, commissioners? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 10-0.
Next item is public participation. This is a first opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on an item which is on today's agenda. There'll also be a second opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak on any issue. Would anyone from the public like to speak on agenda items only? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. And next is budget reviews. First budget today will be the clerk's office. And I need a motion to receive and file.
Romano, receive and file.
Made by Haw, supported by Romano. And we have our county clerk, Anthony Forlini, will have the floor. I know we have a full agenda, commissioners, so department heads, please keep it short, brief, and to the point. I'll do my best to keep us online here as far as time goes, but certainly we want to hear from everybody. We have all of your information in your packets that you have supplied to the board, so we have reviewed that. Clerk, you have the floor.
I appreciate being number one, and I was just mentioning to Pete that I'm going to be under 2 hours, so we'll be good, all right?
Chairman, would you repeat the direction?
You have 3 minutes.
Here with the Clerk Register of Deeds office. I just wanted to highlight a few things that I think that I'm very proud of. And when I turn around, I got the people from my management team here from all the different departments, and they do an excellent job in keeping us on task and putting us into an area where we can be very successful. The first area I want to talk about is elections. As you probably all know, we did a forensic audit of our county server. And why was it necessary? It was necessary because there were people that actually were casting doubt as to the accuracy or possible foreign interference or domestic interference. And on the server itself, we did this for a lot of reasons because, first off, we didn't have all the answers. So we did get all the answers. And the good news is the audit of our server produced great results that showed that our county server and our election process in the county is good. But it also showed us some areas that we can improve on, and we took some of that experience and shared it with the state. And we're going to see things come through the state that from a result of that. One of the unfortunate things that came of that is the state shut down most of the modems across the board, which I don't think they needed to do because with certain protocols we could have had great safe modeming of results with certain protocols that weren't done before. So we'll see what happens in the future, but the good news is Macomb County's elections went well, particularly at the county level. The other thing, and this affects everybody here, is the campaign finance reporting e-filing. We're one of the first counties in the state to do this, and it was kind of a pilot program. We started off with a few people, and we're going to try to expand it with more and more people. And if you haven't done it yet, It really is a great system to keep track of your campaign finance. Get it filed with our office. Things are tracked for you automatically. So if you're getting contributions from somebody, that somebody is continually tracked and added up so that you don't run into a problem where maybe somebody over contributed. I'm sure you all got that problem there, over contributions. But no, it's a good system. It makes it easier for you, it makes it easier for us, and it frees up our staff to do things that are more value added to all the everybody involved with elections. The second thing I wanted to highlight was vital records, another department. CPLs, there's a zero wait time now. I mean, we do between 30 to 70 CPL appointments a day, which is amazing. And there's a zero wait. You can come in without an appointment, same day, and we'll take care of you. We always suggest to have an appointment. That makes it a little bit easier on us. We kind of know what our day is going to look like. But we haven't turned anybody away. And on top of that, we're doing fingerprinting. That was an added service, so that they didn't have to set up another appointment and go to the sheriff's department. So I spoke with the sheriff about that before we did it. He says, "What do you think?" He goes, "Take it. Take it. That'll be great." So we do that in our lobby, and it's a great service to the residents. Marriage certificates. We went from about a 30-minute, 20-minute wait time to do a marriage certificate down to 5 minutes. And we did it through encouraging, more than encourage, requiring people to actually go online ahead of time, fill their information out while they're at home. They realize that they may not know what their spouse's mother's maiden name was or something that they weren't sure about. So rather than try to figure it out at the counter, they figure it out at home. Or we have 4 computers set up in the lobby. They can come to the lobby, fill that out on their own time, not take up a counter, and within 5 minutes, we'll issue a marriage certificate. So that's great improvements, and if you come by our office, you'll see that we are processing with very little wait time and very little lines. My understanding before, the lobby would be packed with people. That's not the case anymore. That same lobby also has Register of Deeds. And the Register of Deeds, the first time in recent history, if not all history, we're at a 24 to 48 hour turnaround time, which is incredible. And I've talked to other recent conferences, other counties. They say, "You're kidding me. That's unbelievable." Well, that's the kind of team we have here in Macomb. They work hard. We upgraded our software last year. We did a few things that are different. And as a result, we got quick turnaround time. So if you're a real estate agent or whatever, you see that our title company, I just met with the title company yesterday. They says, "My God, this is the best I've ever seen it." So that's good news, and kudos to all of you. The other thing we're doing is indexing in-house. So we're indexing these. It used to cost the county $400,000 a year to do this. And I talked a little bit about it last year. And we ended up bringing it all in-house, and we processed those ourselves, saving the county really a tremendous amount of money, and we're doing it quicker than the indexing company was doing it. So that's good news. And then on the court, I just have one comment. We're fully open, which seems like a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal, but it is a big deal compared to other counties. We are open. We're open for business, and together with the court administrator and whatnot, and the chief judge, I think we got one of the best systems really in the state, and hats off to everybody, including the prosecutor, for making it that way. So I wanted to talk a little bit, though, with all these good things, the one thing that bothers me that I've seen since I've been here is the inequity in pay with the staff that we have. And I just want to talk a little bit about a few of them. The Macomb County Chief Election Clerk, the big guy in you, he probably doesn't even know I'm going to talk about this. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have showed up. His pay is $67,000. There we go. We all know it, right? But how does he compare to the local communities and even local county clerks or county election people? You get Harrison Township, Clinton Township, Macomb Township, St. Clair Shores, who's appointed. For from 82 to 102,000. We look at Oakland County, 122, virtually double what ours makes. And then Kent County, who's smaller, 82,000. I think that there's something that needs to be looked at by this board about getting this somewhat rectified. Maybe not overnight, but we need to start looking at this because we have quality people, and we have 4 people in this department. We lose one, that's 25% of our staff. And it'd be pretty catastrophic. So, didn't mean to talk about this in front of Mike, but then we have, between departments here, our judicial court clerks, and we got judicial secretaries, 2 very important parts of the judicial system. The clerk's office, that's a professional job classification, these judicial court clerks. The secretaries are clerical job classification, but you look at the inequity in pay, with a professional job classification, they're actually paid less than the clerical position. And I'm not sure how this ever turned out, and it's no disrespect to anybody, but I think we need to look at this and say, how did this ever happen? I'm of the opinion that, you know, the courts can't run without our court clerks. And, you know, I don't want to demean anybody, but they can run without the judicial secretaries. These are important positions, and I really believe we need to take a look at this and make some adjustments in this category because this is the one area that we have trouble keeping people. And it takes a long time to get them from hire to a judicial court clerk. So I just want to let the board know about this, and I know I've talked to several of you in the past. Then we have the chief court clerk. This chief court clerk directs all activities of the circuit courts, court clerk section, judicial court clerks, and the jury room. There's 42 employees. This person makes $67,000. And again, when I look at it, comparable jobs within the system, this person is horribly underpaid and manages far more people. The next area, these are our supervisors. This didn't come to my attention until we recently took an employee and promoted this person from a senior office assistant to supervisor. And after she got she didn't ask what the pay was going to be, nothing. Well, she got $50 more in her pay, and her responsibilities went through the roof. Not only did she have to co-share the supervisory of approximately 40 individuals, but also the public. Remember, the public comes in, there's a problem, the supervisor takes care of it, goes out and talks to the public. That's a dual responsibility. It's a pretty serious responsibility because that's the face of the county, it's the face of the clerk, it's the person that is actually out there taking care of problems that happen every single day. You look at all these other classifications that are above this, and that's when I finally realized, wow, we got to do something about this because no wonder why nobody applied within our office, except one person that didn't know better, right? So I think this is something that I would like to have considered. I don't know when we do this. We are talking with HR, so just so you know, about trying to adjust this, but I needed to let you all know and recognize what's going on. One thing that, well, there's several things, but the one thing I wanted to maybe bring up that I think is important, there hasn't been co-ops, by and large, within the county offices for high school students or even college students. And I think that's a shame because we have, I think, a responsibility just within our communities that we help kids get employed, have an opportunity to cut their teeth in a professional setting, to know what it's like to deal with the public, and the cost of these people are very, very low. And they can do certain things and take some of the edge off of some of the other things that our regular staff does. And I think we're asking for 4 total. And what was the total cost?
$26,000.
$26,000. So I would, that was removed. I'd love to see that, just because I think is it going to help us much? To be honest, probably not a lot, but I think it's going to help the kids. It's going to help the kids that are in high school, college. For God's sakes, we wouldn't have Kathy Smith here if it wasn't for the old co-op program that we had here. That's where kids start, and I think it's a good thing for us to take a hard look at. One of the things that was overlooked in the budgeting process was granting 2 office assistants, and it was just overlooked, and we talked to finance about it, and they missed it. Granting 2 office assistant part-times. We've got a need to have a part-time person helping out within the office, and we've got 2 of them right now, and we can move that to the CPL fund because of the work that they do primarily within the CPL fund. So I think it might actually save the county some money within that by moving those positions over. So that's, I can talk about a lot more, but that's what I got. We're talking to the executive's office about some capital funding issues, and we got some serious issues with our records. Our records are, there's a construction zone around our records, which we were alerted to, weren't happy about at all. This is a serious problem because these records are not being kept very well. And I guess they were meant to be temporarily over in the Rite Aid building, and temporary turned out to be a little longer than temporary. And we've got, I was at a conference once, and they said, if your microfiche has a vinegar smell to it, it's disintegrating. Well, let me tell you, we opened the drawer and it smelled like an Italian salad. It was, I mean, you can smell the vinegar. It was, so we got to do something fairly quick, which we are, but this isn't a great solution. Our records, we went over there once, and they're, I mean, each book is probably 20 pounds. And we send people over there to grab records, and they're having to lift up boxes with these and try to sort through paper boxes and then find the books that they need. That's no way to run an office. And somebody shared a story with me about Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina came through and wiped everything out, including the clerk's office, everything got wet. Well, they were going to put that aside and take care of those books later. And then, of course, the people, their deeds and everything were wiped out. Everything was wiped out within the area. They says, well, before an insurance would pay their claim, they had to go to the clerk's office and get their deed. All of a sudden, that became a priority, right? All of a sudden, it became a priority. We had to get these records, and we had to dry them up so that we can get these insurance payments out. So I think what we have is pretty serious stuff. The executive's office knows about it, and we're working on it, but I just want you to know that, you know, I didn't put them there, but I'm going to own that responsibility pretty soon that I haven't done anything about it. So we're trying to do something with that. So that being said, any questions?
Questions to each one of these budget pages if we can, so we can get through this as quickly as possible. If there's a general question for the clerk, we can do that right now with the general clerk budget. Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. Tony, excellent presentation as usual. Having worked with most of your staff and the changes you've made and the things you've accomplished, you all need to be congratulated for that. You did mention on the compensation that you had met with HR. Are they basing the salaries on the compensation study that took place a few years ago? What type of resolution did you come to?
Well, I can't tell you we've come to a resolution yet, and until we come up with a resolution, we have no resolution. But, you know, not to look backwards, but I'm guessing during that time that the compensation study was happening, I'm guessing there was a little chaos in the office and things weren't being addressed. So I don't know that the clerk's office really got the proper attention that it deserved.
So what resolution are they proposing, if any?
We've presented all this and a couple other things to them, and this was, you know, Kathy, you might want to come up and talk about, she's got acronyms and everything that goes with it.
Commissioner, we did JDQs on all the supervisor positions and all the positions that Tony's talking about. We have done JDQs, and we have not yet met with HR, but they are aware of it. We met with them on a few issues, but Tony gave them a couple more issues to look at, but they are looking at it, and they do understand it.
Thank
But there
you.
is no resolution at this point.
Now I know why Tony brought you up, so thank you. You also mentioned the elimination of 4 co-ops. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. What was the logic given there? Or was there none given?
Should I call somebody else up? I can't answer that, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty minute, and I think it's important. I really believe we have somewhat of an obligation, call it moral, call it a responsibility to get our youth involved. And the fact that it took us, we have one person we're bringing in under a regular category that we have, and she's a great kid. She's just, she's getting involved, and she works in a real world with adults, and she feels fantastic about it. And I think we have a responsibility that if we can hire our youth, we should.
Well, it's just not
It's not a money thing.
responsibilities. It's an opportunity to train people, hopefully for advancement into the department sometime in the future. I
Kathy
guess I've
Smith isn't
not
gonna be here
heard of
forever.
eliminating co-ops anywhere
Yeah.
until now.
Well, it wasn't eliminated, it was we proposed it, and it wasn't approved.
Oh, okay. The last subject I have, you had mentioned the modems. One subject matter that's near and dear to all of our hearts sitting around here is getting election results quicker.
Yep.
We seem to be lagging, and I know we've talked about this,
Yep.
behind some of the other municipalities. Is that due to the modems? Has that been addressed? Or do we need to stay up to 4 o'clock in the morning on election night?
Might be even later for this next one.
That's
We-
not quite what I wanted to hear.
We were the first to shut off the modems. And why did I make that decision? Because when we called Verizon, because we wanted the modem logs, they said we couldn't have them. And I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Why would that be the case? We have a retention that we're supposed to keep these things, and nobody kept them in the past. Nobody's ever asked for them. I was the first to ask for them. And so then, when I wasn't getting it, I actually talked to our legal counsel, and we were going to subpoena the records. In the meantime, the cutoff time came where we had to make a decision one way or the other. And because of all the controversy that was out there, I says, you know what? It's a small election that we had. Let's just go forward without the modems this one time. We did. We got the results from the modems. We found that there was no interference. We were good to turn them back on, and the state says, well, on your next upgrade, we're not going to approve them anyhow. So you're going to see Oakland County still, they have not upgraded their software, so Oakland County will get theirs in quicker than us. Wayne County did upgrade theirs. They weren't before, but they're not going to be coming in before us. It'll be, you might want to go to your local clerk. We told them, do like the old days, put them up on the windows and have people come in and read the results. And for all of you, it's not so difficult because it may be 1 or 2 municipalities that you have to go take a look, but it'll be a little longer.
A little longer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. For the wages, I think that's the numbers that you put up. I found that really unbelievable.
I figured you would, really, honestly.
Yeah, so if you could just continue to keep us updated after you speak with HR, because it's so important that we are able to keep our trusted employees that already know our systems and know the expectations. And to see that comparison is, I'm sure, is like a slap in the face, because like to see, those in the townships getting paid more than someone in the county, and the responsibility that he has. So I would really appreciate an update on that as you get it. And then the co-op, it's so important. I've been working with a couple of schools, local high schools, to find co-ops for students because the schools don't have enough employees, so they're looking for volunteers to help with certain areas. So that is one of the areas that I've been trying to help with. So if that opens back up, please, keep me updated as well. We have a number of students that are looking just to find out more about our county and about what we do, and to have an opportunity like that, especially for a student that lives so close, in Mount Clemens or Clinton Township, I think that would be an awesome opportunity. So please, keep me updated.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. You said what I was going to say very well. Second is I totally support your use of co-ops. I believe I brought that subject up in some other finance meetings. And lastly, I would have thought Commissioner Hall was a little more confident about the outcome of his election. I know I am. Thank you. Thank you, Clerk.
He just wants to go to bed earlier.
Somebody else's.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. The whole modem thing always confused me because I always thought what was sent in were unofficial results anyway.
Correct.
And then, eventually the physical stuff has to arrive, right? So this is all being shut down on unofficial results.
And my understanding is it may be across the country too. So it's the EAC. Yeah, EAC. I think is no longer going to be approving modem transmissions. So I don't know that it's a good idea. I think that there's protocols that can be done. And I spoke with the state about this, where if we do an audit of the transmissions and we kept things unplugged until 8 p.m., because right now they're on all day, which leads people to think that you can get into it. I mean, it's not designed to be that way, and it shouldn't work that way. But when you turn it on in the morning, it's on all day until the transmission. So you can look at that and say, all right, there's one transmission that happened. It happened at 8 p.m. after the polls closed, and you can be pretty certain that is. You could be pretty certain anyhow, but that gives you another layer of comfort to know that it was a one-way transmission, one time at the end of the day, and we keep everything unplugged until then and then transmit. I'm guessing no transmissions are going to be the thing for the near future.
So nothing breeds confidence in an election more than the next day and the results aren't in, and statewide when they're used to getting them in. I can just imagine the confidence level that's going to take place after this election.
Trust me, Commissioner, the same people that talk about getting rid of the tabulators and talk about getting rid of the modems were the same ones that were complaining that the results weren't coming in a timely fashion.
So, and with respect to the positions in the classifications, we all know we lost our chief of staff to double the salary in Oakland County because her title was chief of staff. And so she was compared with the chief of staff in the county that had like 2 employees. She had 13 bosses. And we all called her on a regular basis, and she had to answer to each and every one of us and take care of each and every one of our issues, whether it was a constituent issue or a whole multitude of things. So sometimes it seemed to me with that compensation study just a slightly wrong wording. And we had so many different titles, but as we're trying to make them smaller into a smaller group of titles, some may have changed just slightly, but didn't capture what they were supposed to be. Does that make sense to you?
It totally makes sense. I mean, we have in Register of Deeds, we have people that we have to train up a bit to do sheriff's deeds, which is a whole nother layer of responsibility, much higher layer of responsibility, but they're paid the same as others. So who wants to sign up for it?
Well, and I'll tell you, when we were trying to get the equity for our chief of staff before we lost that employee, I had knockdown, drag-out fights with HR about this issue. Well, we've got the compensation study. Yeah, but your compensation study isn't capturing all these nuances. And I feel that as these things arise, we need to look at them on an individual basis. We don't want to get back to 500 different types of positions, but I do think we have to recognize also that a position in one department may not have the same responsibility as a position in another department. Not trying to open that can of worms, but when we historically have a position that you can't keep filled, that would be the position you'd start to look at. So I'm hoping you work it out through HR. I'm not sure with all of the unions and the contracts and everything else, I'm not sure how all of that, our role with respect to that. But I'm aware of what you're saying. And then the last thing is on the co-ops. Same with the city of East Point. Most of the long-term employees out of the clerk's office started there from East Detroit High School, which is nice because they also didn't move out of the city. They
Correct.
stayed there and they lived there. And so some of our absolute best employees started out that way. Kimmy just retired after she came on when she was 16 years old. So I don't have any questions with respect to the budget, though. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Clerk Fellini, for coming up. You're good employees. You have preceded you, and we know that you have great employees there doing a good job, and they've operated under some very stressful times with the type of management you've had there before, and I'm glad they didn't leave us because of it. So thanks to all of them publicly for sticking with the office and continue to provide good service to all of us. The co-op positions you want, were those paid co-ops or were those volunteers? People have different ideas about co-op.
No, they were paid, Brian, what was the hourly rate?
That's a different reason then, right?
$12 an hour.
So
You know,
those
but
are-
it's under 20 hours a week. I think it's just a great exposure for the kids to get dressed up, go to work.
I understand that, but there's a budgetary item to that, and so you got to pay them. It's a little bit different issue than just simply bringing them volunteers off the college campus to come in and work happily for the clerk's office and do different things. So there might be a
It's
reason
not
why.
quite like working for a congressional office or something, you know, with a lot of sex appeal. I mean, to be
Exactly.
honest.
It's all good. But I agree, though, that, I mean, early in my term, I advocated starting an internship program here, and it was shot down back then, too. So there are certain reasons why they do that, I guess. But also, I've got 6 communities in my big district in the county. I've got the largest district in the county. It takes an hour for me to drive from one corner of the district to the other. So on election night, you know, I'll be driving around a lot on election night per your suggestion to go look for the election results on the window of my clerk's offices, which may not be there. But, you know, that's what we pay you to do, you know, and you got to be calling them and get the numbers for us and
Trust
post
me,
them
we
as
do.
unofficial results.
Well, you know, and we actually did that in the last election, but nobody really looked into it. We put it out on Facebook. We didn't really push it too hard advertising for it because we weren't sure how well it was going to work. But it actually worked out pretty good, but nobody really went to it. And we can do it again. Whereas electronic posting, so they were taking the papers that they would post up, PDF it to us in an email, and we would take those PDFs and put it on our website.
So there are unofficial results, and that's, but getting back to Commissioner Clanfield was saying, they're posted as unofficial results. They're not official results. So
Yeah, so
can we look for that on the election night so we don't have to
Yes.
keep Harold up till 4 o'clock?
I just asked Mike, are we doing that again? He goes, we can. That's okay.
You can do anything you want. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. If all else fails, call Clerk Fellini. He'll help you out on election night. I just want to piggyback on Commissioner Kleinfeld's statement about the disparity of pay between same position, so to speak, when they're really not the same position. And I think if HR would take a closer look and invite well, I'm sure they do, the directors in to say, or the directors invite HR in to say, hey, this is not a clerk, this is what she's doing. And you just mentioned something about sheriffs. Those are a pistol. Those are one screw up on that, and we're going to get ourselves in legal tangle. I know it. You know it. Being a real estate broker, I know that. So just saying that somebody is a clerk and they're both in the same category, that's incorrect. And again, you don't want to expound and say, well, we've got 30 clerks and they're all doing different things, and then you're opening up different titles to them all. So again, I think that maybe HR should take a little closer look and work a little closer with some of the directors to say, hey, these people are doing extra work, they need the extra pay, and this is what we suggest, instead of just categorizing them all as clerks. The other thing I want to talk about is co-ops. My son did it 30 years ago here at county. He loved it. He had a great time. He met a lot of people. And I'm sorry you weren't around for him to meet you also. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Tony, a couple questions. On C21 of the budget, so the actual county clerk budget, I know we have 2 employees that are slotted in here for professional support. What are the 2 positions?
So those are 2 additional judicial court clerks. We asked for 4, we got 2.
Okay. And then looking at the audit from 21, the clerk's budget had almost $265,000 that was not spent. I don't know, what was that attributed to specifically? I know Steve's looking into that, so if you could follow up with Steve and get
A
us
lot of that
that.
might have been turnover even.
So are you, what, show me, or I'm sorry.
You
which
won't be able
line
to
are
see
you
it because
looking
it's
at on
literally
the-
in our audited financial statements. So
Okay.
Steve's aware of it,
We'll get back
but
to
you
on
just
that.
may want to follow up with Steve just to, so that you're aware of what that difference is, because it is substantial.
From 2021
Correct. From what your amended budget was and what you actually spent of that budget.
My guess it's turnover of employees that, trying to fill spots. I mean,
I don't know what category it was, personnel?
I don't know. It's just a lump sum number.
it sounds like it's gotta be personnel.
And then how many positions right now do you have vacant?
Where, overall in the whole clerk's
Just,
office?
yeah,
Or-
overall.
2, 4, 6.
6.
6 vacants. Okay. Okay.
Actually, well, you have someone doing it out of class. Yeah, okay, 6.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for the county clerk budget, next budget here is the Civil Service Commission. That's budget page C20. Does any commissioners have any questions on page C20? Commissioner Matuzak.
The jump in contract services from 21 to 22 was pretty substantial, and now we're continuing on to 23, 24, 25.
Sorry.
We're on the jury commission.
Let me repeat that, Brian,
Civil
because I
service.
didn't turn on my
Yeah.
microphone. The increase in contract services
Yeah.
went from 3,700 to 15,000, and now we're continuing that 15,000 on
Right.
into the future. Can you tell me what that jump was?
So most of the expenses for this budget are psychological evaluations with a professional doctor for people that are trying to get on the hiring list. We're
Okay.
by state statute required to pay for those evaluations. It's simply based on how many people are applying to get on the list, how many positions become vacant in the sheriff's department where we're hiring or promoting someone.
Okay.
And so we really have no control over how many, and also those costs increase every year when we sign a new contract. And we do go out to bid for that contract. I'm not sure how often it is, but it was just done, I think, last year.
How long is the contract for?
I think it's 3 years.
3 years. Okay, so
Yeah.
that would be the length of this budget.
Right. I think it's
And
3
the
years, and I
proposed-
know the cost did increase from the last contract to this contract, and we do have someone different.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just to follow up on Commissioner Matuzak's question, that same budget, 50% of it was not spent in '21. So you need to talk with finance about that one as well.
For civil service?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's because we come up and we ask you how much, we ask for an amount for exactly that. We don't know how many people we're gonna have that are gonna apply. We have no way of projecting it, you know. So typically what we do is ask for what we spent in the previous year. And in this kind of a small budget, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. I mean, I'm glad we're not coming to you to ask for more money. So that's really all I can say. If we budgeted less, we'd have to come to the board then and ask for more, so, which is not a problem, because you guys are great. We love coming to see us.
Okay, seeing no other speakers on that budget page, next budget page is C28. Any questions on C28, Commissioners?
Elections.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Clerk. The supplies and services takes a tank. Why?
Well,
I mean, I'm okay with it, but I want to know why.
Next year, is there any elections scheduled for next year, Mike? Probably very little.
Absolutely there are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought so. That's why.
That's why he's the chief election.
Yes, so as you'll notice, our budget is very cyclical on a 2-year cycle. The odd years are generally city elections, where we still have to administer them, do programming, things like that, but the cities pay for their own ballots. That is the printing and reproduction cost of our budget, and by far the biggest part. And in the even years, like you'll see 2024, 26, for state and federal elections, we're required to pay for ballots and precinct kits and things like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
We've all seen over the years the campaign statements that we know are incorrect, but we know it's almost impossible for you guys to go through and fix them because you just simply don't have the staff to look at them. You know, a campaign statement where it would take one employee 5 days to go through it because they're that bad. The system you are creating, do you believe that that's going to fix that? Because a lot of them were turned in like in pencil or pen, and there's all this, you know, when you try to look at a campaign statement and you can't make heads or tails of it, if I can't, I know that you guys can't either. Do you believe, because I always thought you were short-staffed, quite frankly, but by putting that system in place that you're putting in with the electronic filing, do you think that's going to solve that issue? And do you feel you're properly staffed in this department? I'm not asking you to ask for more. It's just this is a department we're all familiar with, and it always seemed to me, for a county our size, it's mind-blowing.
It is, and they all do a great job, and that's why every one of those positions is so important, and you lose any one of them, that's 25% of the staff. So what I'd like to say is that electronic, it was experimental. We started this year very experimental, and Mike was real hesitant in moving forward. He says, Mike, we're starting at January 1st. Let's get a group of people that want to do it, and let's work out the bugs. And it's been, I think, from everyone I've spoken with, how many of you are using it? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, okay. Are you happy with it?
I believe my campaign treasurer was coming to speak to you about a couple of bugs she found.
Good.
But otherwise, it seems fine. We'll know when we file at the end of the week.
You know, it does a lot of the math for you, so the math problems are taken care of, and the adding up of things, and the clarity of looking at it, and the fact that we don't have to retype it in when we get it is a huge help for that department.
Yes. Okay, yeah. And because I don't know what size election departments are in other counties, but it's just, to me, the amount of cities and the amount of people that are turning in. And then when the state went to the quarterly reports, on top of everything that you were already doing, I don't think we expanded the department to accommodate for that. I'm not trying to grow the county, but I've always wondered about this department and how it's making it with, you know, it used to be just the yearly report and the elections, and then they've said, okay, now everybody's going to turn in these quarterly reports, and I'm like, the amount of reports that are coming in compared to just a few years ago is astonishing to me, so.
Well, we've actually, Mike and I have actually gone to Lansing to talk about a few of these things. There are about 8 or 9 items that we thought that they could, in a very bipartisan way, come up with resolution, because we've got some fines that are so ridiculous, it'll never get paid, and they're from people that aren't going to pay, and
Yeah.
they're just going to die with it, with the debt there. It's silly. So we have to come up with a better system in shutting down committees that are no longer there. We got to come up with a better system, because we're not going to the prosecutor's not going to prosecute somebody for dues that weren't paid, or
And I don't have a problem with that, but what I do have a problem with is people still sitting in office that are doing that.
that's different.
That has always been a pet peeve of mine.
But they can't run again unless they fix those issues.
Well, we'll debate that one.
Well, I can tell you, we've removed people from the election roll, fairly controversial, that because this person had fines that were still outstanding.
All right, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers for that budget, next is C43, Jury Commission. Any questions, commissioners? Seeing no questions, close that one. Next one is concealed pistol license. This is page D17 in the budget. Seeing no questions there.
That's where it's at, yeah, this is the budget.
Yeah, I don't know if you, just going back to concealed pistol, that's the one where we think we can save the general fund some money by putting those 2 part-timers in this budget. And it was just overlooked, it wasn't,
So, if
Please speak to that.
If I could quickly just say, so it was both my fault and someone in the finance's fault. We had a conversation about it. We both kind of overlooked it. I, on the position control sheet, added the 2 positions that I wanted, and I forgot to change the number in the column to increase how many positions we had. Because I didn't change that number in the column, although I had them listed and were bolded in yellow, a person in the finance department missed it, and I didn't put it in the column, so you're going by the numbers. So we both kind of screwed up, and that's how it did not come forward to the exec's office.
So you currently have 5. You currently have 5 in that department.
It would be 2 part-time people, so it would be a 6. We're asking for.
So you're asking for 2.
1 full-time equivalent, 2 part-time.
Okay. Do you have the total amount of those?
$39,910.
Okay. Seeing no questions for D17, we will move on to page C56, which is Register of Deeds. Seeing no questions, commissioners, unless my system's not working here. No questions there. Moving on to what is that called here? The Monumentation budget, which is D15. Any questions? Seeing none. Last is Technology Fund, D16. Any questions on D16? I have actually one here. The technology fund is specific to what the money can be used for relative to technology, correct? Is that
Right.
where the scanning is being done out of that fund?
Scanning for, no, that's the court.
Okay. Is this a budget where possibly the co-ops could be used?
No.
Could not be used there? Okay.
Yeah, so the fund can only spend money to improve or enhance using technology, the indexing of documents, so that title companies, public, can find documents that they're searching in a more efficient manner. So we're going to be coming to you guys in the future with our track index project, which is a hefty project, but is going to really revolutionize our county and how title companies, realtors, and the public can find information.
And that might be coming to you in November. But it's, I got to tell you, I want to kudos to Jennifer, our deputy register. She, I mean, I've never seen anybody grab a project, and the whole department for that matter, and just has done incredible improvements across the board in all areas. And she came in with a stack of history and whatnot on track indexing, what was tried in the past and whatnot, and she figured out how to get it done within 2 to 3 years, which is millions of entries. And if she says she can do it, I believe she will. And so it'll be pretty exciting when she comes. Now, she did a whole presentation for me. My eyes were going cross-eyed, so I'm just preparing you in advance. Get your sleep the night before, but she's got it figured out.
That won't be my committee. Chair Brown.
Thank you. On that discussion, how much money have prior clerks spent attempting this project? It's been an ongoing problem for us for decades around here, and no one quite seems to get the job done.
The track index?
Yeah.
Yeah. Without, I mean, I can bring that information to you. I've actually put together a little chart. There were years where we spent between $200,000 and $400,000 that year to try and get this thing going. But it is, with Jennifer's expertise, we're looking at doing this in a completely different way than they were back then. And I think technology and the advancements in technology play a little bit of a part in why we're looking at doing it a different way. The programs that were implemented in the past, we were manually track indexing documents. In other words, there was a lot of human intervention involved. We're looking more to do this from a technological aspect. And it still will take a little bit of time, but we're talking about like a couple years versus forever.
I appreciate that.
When this was first brought to my attention, there was a person that was hired from a company that would sit in our office and implement these things one at a time. The problem I had with that was we were paying $250,000 for this one person to be in our office. And when the contract was ended, that person was gone, institutional knowledge was gone. So when I first started looking at this, I said, all right, we'll get a company to organize it, but it'll be our employee, our person, and if we're paying them $50,000 a year, whatever the case is, that's what we're paying. We're not paying $250,000 where the rest of it's all profit. We're gonna maintain it ourselves and let a company maybe bring their software and try to get us going. But then Jennifer came up with this brainstorm. I can't wait to
talk about this
have
in
you guys
greater,
see that.
We'll talk about that in greater detail when you bring the proposal to us again, and
Yeah.
we'll see about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
When you spoke about the co-ops, you sort of did so in a general way. If we're making budget amendments, we have to make it to specific pages, and you have so many pages in here. We would need to know, and I don't know if the board is interested in doing that, but if there is interest, we would need to know the specific pages that you're like, because they may not all be in the same area, right? So it may be, or you might get one and not all of them or something, but the specific pages of the specific areas of your department that you were thinking about having co-ops, if you could get that information to us, it would be helpful. Okay?
Can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, the clerk's review is done. So we have a motion on the floor to receive and file. Please vote. Thank you, Tony. Thank you for your team for being here.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next budget is the courts. I need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Nard, supported by Haw. We have our chief judge here. I believe he's here. Judge, you have the floor.
All right. County commissioners.
All right. Next year, I'll have a PowerPoint program. I don't have one this year. But thank you for having us this afternoon. My name is James Biernet. I'm the Chief Judge of Circuit. As you know, Circuit, Probate Court, the 2 district courts, New Baltimore and Romeo. And I just want to say, because I'm just going to have some brief comment, I'm going to introduce the staff I have with me here. You know, as you know, I mean, we have the courts in Macomb. We're a separate branch of government, and we have 320 employees. And, I mean, that spans, you know, civil cases, criminal cases, juvenile cases, divorce cases, probate cases, cases in district court. That is a monstrous operation to run. And that all shut down in March and April of 20. We got something called Zoom that we were supposed to learn over a weekend. By the way, my brother-in-law bought stock in Zoom before the pandemic and didn't say anything to me. But anyway, so everything shut down, and a lot of courts continued to shut down. The courts that are south of us and west of us, they shut down a lot longer than we did. So as Mr. Forlini said, we got open faster. I mean, we didn't ignore the virtual aspect of it, but we were open, and we had a prosecutor's office and a clerk's office that was also open. And I think because of that, in many ways, we have one, if not the most efficient court system in the state of Michigan. And we could not have done that without my staff, of course, and the prosecutor's office, and the public defender's office, and the clerk's office, but especially the judicial secretaries, who the judges could not survive without. If I could get an amen from our secretaries. Okay. And so just some basic oversight. We're asking for minimal, we've asked for some minimal stuff this year, except for 2 categories. One in probate court, we're asking for adjustments in the court-appointed fees for attorneys, the court-appointed fees in probate court has not, I believe it hasn't changed since like 1979 or something like that, for almost 40 years. And that also includes guardian ad litem fees, psychiatric fees, and then juvenile court, we're asking for an adjustment on the child care fund treatment. Just some other highlights, we're receiving $382,000 in grants for our specialty courts, $135,000 in our raise the age in juvenile court, and my court administrators are all here to answer questions. If I could just introduce some of them. First of all, my court administrator, Julie Bobachan. She helps run all the court system, the budgets, personnel, public relations, negotiating with the county with respect to salaries and budgets, and she does this all without a county car. So she's, well, me too. But, and then Tom Bloom, if you could please stand. Tom's he runs the front of the court. our front of the court, that deals with all domestic relations, deals with divorce, child support, enforcing family court orders. He oversees 105 employees. Then there's Nicole Folds, juvenile administrator. She deals with all of our juvenile system, abuse and neglect, and she oversees 76 employees. Then there's Jeannie Cloud, new employee. Jeannie Cloud oversees our civil and criminal division. She deals with everything to do with civil and criminal court. She oversees 75 employees. John Brennan, where's John? John's our court administrator for probate. He oversees all the mental health programs and the wills and estates and probate. He represents 31 employees. Then we have the 2 district court administrators here, Dara and Karen. Dara Solonik, Karen Grazel. Dara's from the 40-1, that's from Romeo, and Karen's from New Baltimore. As you know, district courts deal with all civil matters under $25,000, all criminal matters, a misdemeanor that goes up to a year. All the felony cases funnel through the district courts that eventually come to the circuit court. And in New Baltimore, there's 17.7 employees, and in Romeo, there's 14.6. And then there's Susan Sable, our court administrator, our court finance, and Christina Wolfield, our specialty courts administrator. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but they all do a great job. And if you have any questions, next year I'll make sure I'll talk a lot longer and get a. Okay.
Thank you, Judge. And that's really why we have all these departments here at this budget meeting, because you all work. It all connects together between the courts, prosecutor, clerk, et cetera. Obviously, there's always a longer budget session, but it's important to have you all here in one room so we can uniquely ask these questions collectively to all of you. Okay, Commissioners, so we're going to start here on page C19, the main circuit court budget. We'll start there. Are there any questions for that budget or for the circuit court in general? I'll ask the first one since no commissioners are coming up on the screen yet. So the change in employees here, so we're going from 73.5 to 75 in this budget. It looks like you've decreased one of the professional support positions and increased the clerical staff. Can you just talk a little bit more in detail of those positions?
We had a court reporter retire this past year, and what we're trying to do is hire several recorder secretaries, which will be certified in our recording system, our FTR system. We've encountered some problems during COVID because of the hybrid cases. Certain cases aren't getting recorded properly because we have no one monitoring it to hear that things aren't being picked up. Our judges and judicial secretaries turn the equipment on, but they aren't sitting there with headphones on like in a lot of district courts listening to what's being recorded. So the idea is to start building up some recorder secretaries to assist us with that in our big cases, like a trial or an evidentiary hearing, to make sure we're not losing any of that evidence. So the court reporter, it was agreed we would put in a video equipment, and as they retired, we don't fill court reporter positions anymore. But we're seeing a gap with especially hybrid cases where things aren't.
So historically, like 30 years ago, every judge in circuit court and probate court had a court reporter, a real person. Then they worked with the union, the court reporters union with the courts. This is literally 30 years ago, that they would agree that once a court reporter retired, they would not replace it with a person, but rather with FTR, with the video. And we're down now to one court reporter left. There's only one. Judge Drzezinski that has the last human being that, and so we're trying to, but we have to have a proper transcript, and so this is what we're trying to do.
Okay. Looking back at the audit for 21 as well, I think you should follow up with finance. Your budget, it was over $800,000 that was not spent.
We looked at that a little bit already, and a lot of that was personnel, and that court reporter retired at the beginning of the year, so that's a big salary that we had all year. And the other part was, and the other part was jury fees. Our juries are still down, so we didn't spend as much in jury fees.
Okay. Seeing no speakers for this budget, we're going to move on to C24, District Court for New Baltimore. Are there any questions on that page? Seeing no questions there, we'll move on. C25, the Romeo District Court. Seeing no questions there. You don't have to come up unless we ask you to.
I'm just torturing them.
Oh, I didn't see that. I was trying to focus on my questions as well as keeping us on track here. So, next budget, family counseling, budget C31. I'm sorry, C35, I apologize. Seeing no questions. Juvenile Court, C44. Can you talk about the one position there change? We have a professional support change there.
In 2020, we had a probation officer position that was unfunded. It was vacant and unfunded, and we're asking to have that position put back into our budget. Our filings were severely down in 20 and 21, but we've already surpassed our 2019 filings this year, and we are receiving some funding through the Raise the Age grant, because in October of 21, 17-year-olds came under the jurisdiction of the Juvenile Court, and that has to be funded 100% by the state. So $135,000 we are anticipating in 23 to cover.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for that one, Law Library. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Seeing no questions, Probate Court, C47. John's not getting up.
Yeah.
Is now.
Seeing no questions. Okay, moving on. Circuit Court Programs, D23 and D24.
Which one is this, Chairman?
This is the Circuit Court Programs, D23 and D24. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Chief Judge.
Yes.
The question on the programs, does those specialty courts fall into this budget?
Yes.
Why don't you speak into the mic so they can catch on, we
yes.
gotta get you on the
Sorry.
record, so.
Yep.
So, every time there's a specialty court, there's an expense. There's been a proliferation of specialty courts, seems to be the in thing now in the judiciary to have specialty courts for this thing and that thing to give more attention to special needs of various people that come before you. How is that running, and is that creating a difficulty on staffing those specialty courts?
Well, if I could bring up Christina Woolfield. She's our supervisor for the specialty courts, and
See, my question is that I get a sense that those specialty courts are getting out ahead of the budget we have to support them. And maybe you don't have them staffed enough or not staffed properly. to do that.
Are you referencing other departments? that
Yeah, other
need- so-
departments and staff, you would get a good idea, we could just have a specialty court to do this, but guess what? The clerk's office has to provide staffing. The prosecutor needs to provide staff to cover those specialty courts, and those are all costs to our bottom line, so, I'm wondering if there's any thought given to those areas, and do you have adequate staffing to take care of the ones that you have now?
We currently do. I have adequate staffing. I'm assuming both of those departments would have comment on how much pressure that's on their department. I mean, there's no way to pay for it out of the grant money. So we'd have to start canceling those programs if we weren't able to staff them any longer, if that was the position of the other departments.
They're not required by state statute. Those are voluntary programs that the courts started, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And there's the drug court, mental health court, veterans court, Swift and Sure. Sobriety court. Yeah.
How
was the drug court judge.
How many prosecutors are required to be in each one of those courts?
One.
One.
And currently, they're staffed by their APA that's in the courtroom. You can talk to, obviously, the prosecutor's office on how they're staffed, but
But you don't have any issues, you think that there's adequate staff there?
they're there, so yes.
Are they fulfilling a
Yes.
need, or are they
They're
just
there,
there?
and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
From your perspective, you're the ones administering the law, and you know, make sure you got the right staff there.
They are currently,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I could say this, no judge that has those, because I can't speak to the other departments, but the judges who are currently having these specialty courts, I don't hear any complaints that they're having a hard time getting people there, or people, you know, they seem to be running smoothly. I could just, historically speaking, I can't speak, I mean, my staff can speak today. I can say I was the judge, I was the drug court judge for 5 years when I got appointed in 2011. This is prior to Mr. Lucido being the prosecutor. And now, I'm not saying this exists now. I'm saying this exists when I was the drug court judge for 5 years. No prosecutor ever came to my court, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know why. Mr. Smith does not take any answers to that, okay? I mean, he's not here to respond. I'm just saying, historically speaking, I was a drug court judge. Judge Servito was a drug court judge. Judge Rzinski was a drug court judge. Things have changed now with Mr. Lucido as prosecutor, but I can tell you that, I mean, when I was the drug court judge for 5 years, and you were there, Christina, right? Was there a prosecutor?
No, there was not.
No. So things have changed now, and I appreciate everything that the prosecutor's office is doing. Historically speaking, though, that was the reality.
The judges that are assigned to those specialty courts, do they have other dockets outside of the specialty court, or is that their sole responsibility?
No,
they have a whole we have a whole, when I was the drug court judge, I had a full civil docket, full criminal docket.
They volunteer their time during lunch typically. They're working through their lunch hour to do their specialty court dockets.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just going.
That's right. I didn't get.
I'm trying to speak to the. Right. I'm just trying to understand if if there's how much stress they're causing to the system by. I mean, they're doing good things. I mean, I've participated in some of those graduation ceremonies and things that the judges have done, and I appreciate that. So we're working forward to it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge, this is a sort of,
Oh, that would be.
She's speaking to you.
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. This is a sort of larger, more overriding question, which I think may be getting to at part of what Chairman Brown is talking about. There's a proposal to revamp how we deal with incarceration and intake, and directing people more to treatment and more to services they need as opposed to just putting them in jail. The proposal is to spend a significant amount of money to reconfigure our facilities on how we do that, as well as our personnel and how we sort of look at it. I'm wondering how coordinated that effort is with the courts, because clearly, if you all are sentencing people, there's a coordination that needs to happen. And I think in addition to philosophically looking at that, we have some budget things to look at in terms of staff and reconfiguring buildings and reconfiguring personnel. And so I'm sort of wondering how you are, as the courts, participating in these discussions.
Well, I mean, and Julie and Christina can jump in again, going back, this is over prior to over 5 years ago. I'm the drug court judge. I get someone in my court who has home invasion first, and let's say some drug charges, okay? Their guidelines are 70 months to 150 months prison, okay? Now, they're most likely in jail at a certain point when they get into drug court. They go right from jail, they're probably in jail, I don't know, a couple of weeks to a month, or they go right into inpatient. And then they come out into the drug court, which I forgot now, is it 2 years? 2 years for the drug court. So it's 2 years for the drug court. The conditions that are put on them are, it is a boot camp. They have to, we want them to succeed in boot camp, in drug court. They succeed in drug court, I don't sentence them in the guidelines. They're not going to prison for 10 years. They're not going to prison at all. They're going to be successful in drug court, and they don't have to worry about going to prison. So that's one aspect. Now, if you guys want to talk about...
Mine is more a process question.
Okay.
We're about to invest a lot of money, at least the proposal is to invest a lot of money, in how we handle people who are coming through the court system, into the jail, and into treatment. I want to know, are you guys participating in this process? I would like to know there's some coordination about this so that when it comes time to look at, are we adequately staffing all of these moving parts that we're now changing, reconsidering, reconfiguring, that someone is actually thinking about that from the court's angle?
We are involved in those conversations. We are involved in those conversations. We've met with Barb Caskey several times. We're met with the jail. We've been in the meetings. So we've been participating in those conversations.
And are you all generally supportive of this process?
We are.
This plan?
Yes. Yes.
And this fits with your specialty courts and your other things?
Correct. Am I speaking out of turn?
No.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Expanding a little further on that, I mean, if you just simplify it, does that mean your drug court is going to become a lot busier because we're going to be changing intake? Does that mean that could become a full-time job for one judge because we're completely changing how we process inmates? That's, I believe, the nature of the question.
So it could and it could not. It depends on what type of diversion efforts are being done at the district court level prior to, with felonies. It depends on, right now with the drug court program, for instance, they take up to 50 participants for the program. They are usually repeat offenders. They are usually in the program in lieu of a lengthy jail or prison sentence. Some of them have been through treatment multiple times. Some of them have not been through treatment multiple times. It really just depends. That population has a variety of different needs. So it could potentially help the situation. We might not see as many people get up to the circuit court level if they're adequately treated, when they get a misdemeanor charge, or if they're able to get themselves into a program, upon arrest. It just really depends. But it could be the opposite. It could be that, now more people are coming to the program because they're aware of the services and they're aware of the funding that they can get in lieu of that diversion.
And all district courts are different with respect to because Warren takes in felonies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess we don't really know and understand how the processing in the jail works with the district courts and works with you guys. And I think Commissioner Matuzak was sort of providing the knowledge that we don't have the knowledge, so to speak. And then when Chair Brown was asking about the positions, like, would you need more prosecutors? First of all, I don't know how drug court works. The concept that there wouldn't be no prosecutor is an indication. I don't have any idea really how that works. But even if we did need more prosecutors because of the specialty courts, don't the specialty courts change the number of incarcerated individuals at the county and the state level, in prisons and in jail? So aren't we saving money on the back end with less people incarcerated because of these specialty courts?
Yes, I would say so.
And would you say, do you think that we're saving the county more money or the state because we're not sending folks to prison that may have been headed towards prison?
Well, it's probably both.
Yeah, I mean, it depends by program. For instance, just using the drug court as an example, most of the individuals that come into that program are straddle cell or above. So straddle cell indicates that they could go to jail or prison, and a presumptive cell means that they would be a prison sentence. So most of our people are straddle cell or above, but that doesn't mean necessarily. It just depends, because they could be going to jail, they could be going to prison. It just depends on how they were, their guidelines.
It's probably mostly a jail population. I mean, you could possibly have prison, but the guidelines to get into prison sometimes involves crimes that does not allow you to get into specialty courts.
But if you are diverted to a specialty court, and we're saving the state money with some of these folks when we're successful and they're not going to prison. And I think what Chair Brown was kind of indicating is that might cost us more money in personnel in different departments. Do we get the savings, or does the state get the savings that are created when these individuals don't end up going to prison?
Well, for prison, it would be with the state, yes.
So the state's realizing the savings for the work that we're doing here, and it may actually, in some situations, be costing us more money.
Well,
in district court, in the Romeo court, we
You can't speak from up. You gotta come up, please. You all have to speak into the microphone, because we keep this for the record. If you're not talking from the back of the room, we can't hear
I
you.
apologize.
Thank you.
In the Romeo court, we have a drug sobriety court, and all of our money is saving for the Macomb County Jail. So all of those people could be going to only jail, not prison. So as far as that court is concerned, it's saving the county money.
Right. And I'm fine. In a case where we're saving the county money, we may also be spending money in different departments, but it's okay because we're saving money over here, even if we have to spend more money over here. And I'm okay with that because the greater good happens from it. I'm just starting to recognize we might be saving the state a lot of money, but it could be costing us to do it. And if that's the case, it might be something we may need to sort of study, so to speak. It might not be costing us a lot. But if we're going to change the intake and we might be changing these courts and they may become busier, it may down the road cost us more money. It's just something we might want to keep our eye on, I think. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. If you had told me that the state was mandating these courts, then we could go to the state under Headley and say, okay, well, kick in some cash. They don't do a lot of that, even though they do mandate things, but that's something we could look at. And that's a discussion we'll have at a later date. However, what is the record of the specialty courts in terms of recidivism? People go through the program, how many people stay out and don't commit any crimes, how many people go out and commit crimes?
So
hopefully you're keeping records of that.
Yes, we report, each program reports all their data to the State Court Administrator's Office, so they keep very good records. We are in the process of doing our year-end reporting for each program, so I don't have exact recidivism rates on every single program. Each program is different. When you look at the population of the folks that are coming into the program, that plays a role as well, because most of the participants that are coming into the program are those high-risk, high-needs offenders who are, most likely, long-term jail, prison sentences. So sometimes when you see recidivism rates, they may look like they're low, but in reality, we have kept that person out of trouble for 2 years or 3 years. And prior to coming into the program, they were reoffending every 6 months. So, we do have those rates. I can get them for you, but we just need to finish up our reports.
Yeah, because, it's good that we're slowing down the rate of recidivism, but if they're still, if they're still committing crimes over the long haul, it's not the ideal thing that everyone hopes. So I'll be curious if you provide that report, because really the only way you can track them is while they're on probation, right? Then after the probation, there's no way to know. Well, I guess you could find it if you really wanted to look. And maybe they do look. I don't know how they track people 5 and 10 years out after they
The
leave.
State Court Administrator's Office does track.
Do they?
Yeah, so we can get you numbers.
That'd be great. It'd be good to see that on all the programs, and they're going to be various degrees because they're just different programs. But I'd be interested to see it, and I'll share it with the board when we receive it. I think that special courts are needed, and I've referred many people to various courts, so I think they're great, and I totally support the program. I'm just saying we got to think about the budget and what you guys do there, because it affects not just your area, but the whole county operation. And as you ever heard, we got other needs too. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Couple questions. The first one is, in the audit, there's a budget line for the district court third class. What is that?
That's witness fees for witnesses that the prosecution calls to district court, I think during preliminary exams and things of that nature.
Okay. And John, you shouldn't have came up because you drew a couple questions for me, but I don't need the answers right now. Just follow up with Kyle at our office, but in the probate court budget, I'm circling back one budget page here, Commissioners, but the supplies and services and the contract services, both of those lines went up. Can you just share with our office why they're going up in this budget cycle? We don't need the answer right this second.
And that was what Judge Burnett talked about at the beginning, the guardian ad litem, the defense costs, and the psychiatric fees.
Perfect. Off the hook again, John. Okay, we're done with circuit court programs. Next is front of the court, budget pages D33 and D34. Commissioner Haw. And Tom, if you want to come up.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, early part of last year, Chairman Brown and I met with you, talked about the process. One of Tom's responsibilities is assuring that those that have been charged with paying child support are actually paying it. We sat for about an hour and a half, and at that time you had indicated you were short some people. I think it was due to the pandemic or COVID or whatever. Do you feel that you're adequately staffed now to try and expedite the process? And then I'll have a follow-up question to that.
At the time of the pandemic, between March of 2020 until now, we have replaced 25 employees. Mm-hmm. Right? So we have done a lot of interviewing and a lot of hiring. That's not new positions. Those are 25 brand new employees. So we brought a lot of people in. So yeah, we have, I think we're adequately staffed at this point for what we're doing. There are some other things that, we asked for in the budget we didn't get that we're going to come back again with next year in terms of being able to help us do some other things we want to do, but we've done a lot of hiring, so we are in a position to begin moving forward again.
I would guess most of my colleagues here, as I did, thought you were the single source entity in this process to make it work. Let me tell you, not close. When he described the process, and I know I'm going to miss some, with the lawyers, the judges, the prosecutors, the state of Michigan, the treasurer's office, finance office, to get a check from this point to this point, hand carried, took 14 and a half days. Now there's mothers out there. We've spent a lot of time talking about prisoners, intake, mental capacities. We spent a lot of time with the clerk talking about those that have not paid campaign finance fees. What we don't spend a lot of time talking about is mothers and children who are out there being evicted out of their homes, not being able to eat because there's deadbeats running around this county. And I know our prosecutor's going to hit on this as one of his attributes that he wants to increase. But I really would like, Tom, probably after the budgetary process, if you and the judge would come back and just have a flow chart of the amount of hands that touches anything that a mother and children are waiting for. It was, both Don and I were just flabbergasted. Again, I was the one that thought Tom was the guy. He can make it work. He's the one that touches it. He touches it, part of this train to try and get things done. So if there's going to be one focus with me on this budget, that's going to be one of them. So I want to tell you, you have my 100% support on what, that's why I was shocked, and I'm glad to see it. You didn't add additional personnel, but we have to fix this system. It is totally antiquated, technology-wise. Everybody claims they've got the latest and greatest. I don't care what it takes to fix it. It's not working. I personally know that. It's not working. So that's going to be one of my priorities. And Tom, for us to deal with it, that hour and a half we spent with you, I walked out of there and went, oh my God, no wonder this doesn't work. So I would like to make that offer to you. Our, well, Crystal's not here. I would like it even to be on the Government Ops Committee, which at this time I chair, and have you explain to everybody, because I know I'm not the only one that's having mothers touch me and saying, I just got evicted out of my house. I have to move in with the grandparents who can't afford to have them move in. So that was a long dissertation to say, I greatly appreciate what you're doing. The fact that you haven't added personnel kind of surprised me, but I appreciate it. And an explanation of this process, I think we all need to hear. So thank you.
May I provide just one point of clarification?
Sure.
Thank you. The vast majority of our child support checks are received and sent to the Michigan Child Support Distribution Unit. They're processed automatically through income withholding orders. That is about $130 million a year that's processed seamlessly. The incident we had involved a felony non-support case, which puts it in a completely different category, and it does involve a process that is much more complicated. To your point, that process needs to be looked at and needs to be streamlined, because that money is just as important as $130 million that goes to other payers as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, because I missed them in my train of the amount of people that touch everything. So I greatly appreciate that, and I agree with you. That process needs to be looked at very hard.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, seeing no other speakers related to the front of the court, that is the court's part of the budget today. So thank you, Judge Biernat. Commissioners, we have a motion on the floor to receive and file. Please vote.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, next budget is the Public Defender's Office. This is budget page D39. I need a motion to receive and file.
So moved, second, Haw.
Moved by Nard, supported by Haw. Tom, you have the floor.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. Thomas Tomko, I'm the public defender here in Macomb County. And as I stand before you today, it's a little different than when we were where we were last year. Last year, we were asking for a budget that included construction expenses. The construction expenses are those related to the Clemens Center. Clemens Center, as you might know, is a building that's been in the county a long time, and for that great period of time in the most recent past, it's been vacant in certain areas. And so last year, we were asking for funds from our grant funding agency to be able to refurbish that so that we could expand our office. Our office currently consists of 9 attorneys. We've got 5 staff people, and we're in need of expansion, especially if we can complete our function. Our function is really twofold. One is administrative, where we appoint attorneys off a rotating list. After we appoint them, when the case is finished, they send in a bill. We process the bill. That gets moved on to finance, and they get paid. That's one portion. But another function of our office is to represent indigent defendants. And to do that, again, we have a total of 9 attorneys. 8 of those in the office are taking cases, doing things in the district court and in the circuit courts. But we need additional individuals. Our budget is one that is primarily grant funded. It's partially county funded and partially grant funded. And last year when we asked for that construction, we were hopeful to get the grant money to complete the construction, but it didn't come through last year. So we reapplied in April. That grant funding was granted. In fact, we have a grant contract. Now we have approximately 1.5 million in order to refurbish that Clemens Center space so that we can have more space to hire more employees, ones that we need. So that's the exciting news for this year, that it is funded and we are moving forward. There's questions about that, as with any construction project, as you might imagine, cost of materials, cost of labor, things, inflation, all that. I mean, there's plenty of things that are concerns. Built into the grant funding, there's about $400,000 or $500,000 of contingency monies to try and cover those things. And so we're hopeful that will work out. We were before you earlier, we asked for some funding to move things around so we could get the architect started on the project, and the architect did start on the project, and we're moving forward. What we would have to do, of course, is get a request for proposals, to evaluate what some of the costs are, and then get the people in place to get the construction started. Some of the remediation for any type of environmental has already been started at the location, so that's good. It's moving forward, and we're excited about that. Again, once we get that construction completed, then we're in position to add additional employees. We'll do that slowly in increments. And once we get that done, again, it wouldn't be started until perhaps the end of the year because the construction has to be completed. If it meets expectations, it may take about 6 months to get the construction done. If it started in January or February, then 6 months from that it would be done. So in the last quarter would be the first realistic time that we'd be looking at hiring any additional personnel. So that's the news at the Public Defender's Office, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Thomas. I actually have a question here in regards to the capital outlay related to that building expansion, remod at the Clemens Center. So I know, and this might be a question for Steve, I know we're transferring in general fund dollars to zero out your budget. Steve, did we transfer that money into this budget? And if we did, and it was not used because the grant did not come through, why was this fund balance not increased by that difference?
Can you restate your question? I'm not sure I followed your
So we had
idea.
here, well, I guess this year, I guess I'm looking at the wrong columns here, but this year we have 1.4 million, 1.46 it looks like here for this year's budget in 22. We were going to transfer in $2.3 million into that budget for this year. Those grants didn't come through, so that work didn't start. I'm just curious why is there not a trailing fund balance in here?
So what you'll see, what you don't see here, I should say, is an amendment that came before you in September, I believe.
Okay.
To amend the 22 number to reflect that there's no construction, we didn't hire as many folks, and the numbers you see in this document are as of July 31st.
Got it. Timing.
Timing.
Okay, perfect. Any questions, commissioners, for this budget? Seeing none? Thomas, you're all set.
Very good. Thank you all.
Motion on the floor to receive and file. Please vote. Kyle, are we good there on the vote?
Waiting for it to pop up here. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, next is Child Care Fund. Need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Nard.
Support Kleinfeld.
By Kleinfeld. Okay, first one is the Juvenile Justice Center, budget page D25. Rhonda, ready to go.
Hello. So I'll begin by saying I thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and present the JJC's proposed budget and respond to any questions that you might have. I think you'll be pleased to know that the center, once again, is asking for little this year. I'd like to start by just offering a few salient points on some of the things that have occurred throughout the year and some of those requests that we'll be making. We've spent the last year, once again, continuing to take steps to right-size the facility. As you're aware, I think we've talked about this. We talked about this last week as well when I was over here. We have a total of 140 beds in the facility, but we've used significantly less than that over the last 20 years. As our population is to continue to decline, it's been our goal for the last number of years to determine the actual needs of the community and the court, and to take steps to right-size the facility to meet those needs. In our case, right-sizing has included determining the number of beds that are needed for both detention and/or treatment, the types of programs needed by our local court, not only the number of staff, but the classifications of those staffs, and making sure that those classifications are accurately matching the programs that we're providing. It's been really important to the center to approach the county and the board each year with a responsible budget. I feel like we're doing that again this year. This year is not any different. We have very few requests. We are requesting an increase of $25,000 to provide all the facility staff training and implicit bias. And we'd like to do that in January of this upcoming year. This training is recommended by our partners at the HR department, and it's consistent with the industry best practices, and it's important for our staff to have access to that training. We do have a small incremental increase in our laundry services, and by small, it's $5,000. Our laundry does continue to be done by Martha T. Berry. They were charging us 40 cents a pound. They increased that poundage. We're still paying them half of what the industry would charge us if we were to go outside of here and look for laundry services. The center has historically provided treatment programming with the goal of providing those local residential treatment services for our local court. And the goal of that is eliminating or reducing the need for the court to have to go outside of the community. I do know that there's changes within our court. They have more community-based services. There's been a declining need for both detention and treatment services. We did close our treatment unit in January of this year. The usage by our local court had gotten significantly low. And in addition, there's been an inconsistent usage. So our numbers would plummet way down. They would come up to using about 50% of that program. What that means is the cost to provide treatment for those kids was really high, higher than what the court might see by seeking treatment out in the private sector. So there was a determination to go ahead and close that unit down. Of course, if there was any point in the future where that need was there again or a different type of need, we can always revisit that. But that was part of that right sizing and trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can with that. We also did that with our detention unit when we did an analysis of the last 10 years' use and determined our local court had been using an average of about 26 detention beds. And then our out-county St. Clair contract was an average about 8 beds. And again, we talked about that last week and said, listen, let's staff 40 beds. Let's not staff 60 beds or 50 beds, but let's staff what we need. And again, that resulted in vacating quite a few of those youth specialist positions over the last few years. With the closure of treatment, of course, we vacated multiple positions through attrition. Those are sitting there vacant right now and funded. So we'll kind of see where we go with that. We may revisit treatment again. So right now we have 6 FTEs, non-youth specialist FTEs sitting vacant, 2 part-time sitting vacant, and we have 5 full-time youth specialists sitting vacant right now. We also, our food services positions, those have remained vacant while we're contracting those services. We'll likely be recommending the continued contract of food service. I'll be coming back to the board before the end of the fiscal year to talk about that. I would recommend, as I did last week, to continue providing the detention space to St. Clair County to generate those revenues. Those revenues were budgeted in at $350,000 this year. We're making, or have historically made more than that. But I did talk with finance, and I said, we want to be careful with that figure. I'm getting that raised up too high and have that artificial revenue coming in. So revenues were a little lower in this budget than they were last year. And I did speak to turnover of staff last week as well, and we continue to work with HR. They're working at the table in negotiations. We did discuss closing the 1 unit temporarily, and we're hoping to get that up and running again to provide more services for our local court. So in closing, I want to just share how proud I am of the center staff. Not only for their routine commitment, but they were extraordinary during the last several years with COVID. These were the staff that were on the front lines, providing services at their own risk, being in the front line, not knowing what was going on with COVID and the pandemic. We did have some staff, of course. We're proud to say we didn't have an outbreak with the kids. We did have some staff that had COVID, and we followed the protocol and were able to keep everyone there safe. But importantly, I think during these challenging times, our staff not only provided the residents with a safe and secure facility, they've also went through obstacles and uncertainties with programming and the numbers of kids and some of the downsizing that we've done, and they've had these worries follow them as well. I assure them that we have every intention of making a full commitment to the youth home. It's just going to be on a little smaller scale, at least for right now. But I am proud of the staff. Their flexibility and professionalism over the last couple years, no complaints. Imagine going to work and thinking, geez, am I going to be mandated to work a double shift today? And not knowing whether or not that's going to happen. And we didn't hear a complaint about it. And that did happen when we had instances where we got low on the staffing. And they've done a phenomenal job. I'm really proud of them. We have a nice youth facility here. And, the board's all part of that, of course, too. And you should be proud to have your facility.
So we've talked about the low beds for years, and I was recently at a MAC conference where Commissioner was telling me they're in a panic because they don't have facilities. Mm-hmm. They don't have facility. They need a place, and I'm like, we got all the room in the world. I don't know what to tell you. We got beds floating all over the place.
Do.
And they were like, well, why don't we know about that? Is there a statewide shortage while we're dealing with the empty beds over here?
Absolutely there is. And counties and communities do know that. We actually have a networking group, and we have our information out there on several different websites. Now, does that mean we have a bed when someone calls? Not necessarily. Most of the court and county operated facilities in the state are helping other counties. Most of our help is going to St. Clair. It's going to one county.
Right. Yeah. That's why I knew we were doing that with St. Clair, but I was wondering, should we be looking at that with others? It's one of the issues I always had with the jail, right? We needed a new jail. Wayne County needed a new jail. Oakland County needed a new jail. And I'm like, why can't we build one regionalized jail? And the sheriffs are like, well, no, we can't. No. Who's going to run it? We can't do that. We don't think different. You know what I'm saying? We don't think that way. We don't. Everybody's got their own little compartments and their own little counties. But when you have come all these years and you've got all this staff, you're worried about losing jobs because we have to downsize and we have to downsize. And I hear there's other counties that are saying, where are we going to put our juveniles? Why aren't these things coming together with each other?
Well, we talked about this a tiny bit last week, and there's like it's almost like I don't want to say formula, but imagine, maybe this will help. We're staffing 40 detention beds right now. Our local court has 32 of those beds. St. Clair County has access to 8 of those beds. St. Clair County is using about an average of 7 beds. Our local court is using an average of about 26, 27 beds. If St. Clair's usage was 12, or let's say 11, we would have to finance 1 unit for them alone. We wouldn't be able to charge them I think we charge them $169 a day now. It would be far more expensive than that. What they're doing is they're putting 5, 6, 7, 8 kids in a unit that we already are staffing for our own community. So what that is the generation of revenues on a unit that's open already. So we certainly could do that with other counties, but we want to be very careful about the way we're doing it because Macomb doesn't want to be in a position where you're paying for the care of kids from another community.
Right.
Also with that, a lot of the communities that are detaining kids are only detaining the worst case scenarios. Our own local court's doing that. Waivers, extremely mentally ill, very violent, aggressive. So the kinds of kids that other communities are looking to detain, because it's very expensive, are only those that really have to be detained. That's going to put some additional stress on the facility as well. I mean, that's the business that we're in. But we need to acknowledge that we would now be doing that for other communities as well, not just our own. So there's that fine line in terms of when we're absorbing costs, and you never want to do that.
No.
With St. Clair, that's worked out nicely. The revenues that we're getting are for a unit we would have staffed anyway.
Okay. All right, I'm turning back over.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi.
A couple questions for you. You mentioned the treatment unit was closed down in January. Is that, I'm guessing that's something that in the previous year's budget would have been funded for an entire year. How much was that, and where did those dollars go if it had been closed for basically the entire year? Or is that a Steve question?
The question?
So I would imagine with this treatment unit, we would fund it. And we would fund it for a whole year, anticipating this unit would continue for the full year. Where did those other dollars go for the 11 months that it was closed for?
They're in our budget right now in vacated positions.
It's in vacated
Yes.
positions?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And what was happening, commissioners, as the population was declining, like we were maintaining 2 therapists on that program, but in the last year we maintained 1.
Okay.
Another therapist left, and the treatment manager was providing the clinical services for those last few kids that were in the program.
Okay. I was just trying to
Yeah.
associate where that would be in here. And then on your budget page for supplies and services, it skyrockets.
It did.
Can you
and
explain that a little bit?
Well, remember, we're one piece of the child care fund.
Okay.
And so I'm going to turn it over to this guy.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Sorry, Steve. All right, I'm going to hang here.
So I was just talking to Mr. Steitler about that. So you'll see that supplies and services, went up significantly. Room and board went down significantly. There's a mismatch there. So if you look over on page D26, down maybe a little over 2/3 of the way, under juvenile court placements, there's a line called state institutions, that's state wards. That $1,750,000 needs to be in the room and board line item and taken out of the supplies and services. So what I recommend we do is make that shift and send a new revised page to Kyle.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That was my question too, Commissioner. Good question. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. I asked this question earlier of the courts about tracking people that have come into their system and, what happens to them afterwards. Do we do any similar tracking after they leave us? Like how many run-ins they have with the system again, or how many people revisit us?
We do not with the detention program. We did do tracking with our treatment program.
Okay.
But the detention program, we don't. That's more designed housing pending further action of the court. So normally when you're tracking to determine if a program is working. Detention in itself it's housing. I mean, we're doing positive things for
Of course,
the
as they
kids.
get older, they wouldn't show back up at your services. They wouldn't be eligible, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers on this item. Next item is juvenile court, but I believe we've already done that. And no, we have not? Okay, we have not.
Juvenile court has a general fund budget, and then we have some items in the child care fund. Only certain things are eligible. We have our community-based intensive probation services, which includes counseling, intensive probation, a substance abuse treatment program, and a sex offender program. And then additionally under that is our line items for our placement. So kids that we need to send out for residential treatment that cannot be served in the community. And there's, as Rhonda said, we don't have that option in our local facility. We'd always had to send out, they did not provide treatment services for sex offenders in the JJC when they did have treatment. So we always maintained funding in order for us to send those sex offenders to outside private placements. And so we are asking to increase that this year because we have been having to send out also just traditional delinquents for residential treatment instead of servicing them here in the county.
And is that specific to the C44 budget page?
I'm on D26 under juvenile court placements.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Any questions on this item, commissioners? Seeing none, we're all set.
Thank you.
Next is Department of Human Services, budget page C26, Special Revenue Fund page D26. Valerie, I know Valerie's here. If we have any questions. Commissioners, any questions for Valerie? Or Valerie, do you have to say anything in regards to your budget?
I am Kim Borgia. So I am from the Children's Services side of the State of Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Valerie Nunn retired. There's a new person behind her on the Medicaid and General Services side. So I'm on Children's Services only.
Well, thank you for that update. I'm reading what's on my agenda, so it's Valerie, and you were Valerie today. Seeing no questions, we are all set for Department of Human Services. Next is, we've gone through all the child care funds, so we've got a motion. We need to vote on item D here.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, next is probation. This is budget page C49. Need a motion to receive and file.
Support Van Sickle.
Moved by Nard, supported by Van Sickle. This is budget page C49 again, Commissioners. Is Alex here? Alex is not here. Do we have any questions regarding this budget page? I think it's pretty straightforward.
If he's not here, we could zero it out. Just kidding.
Well, why don't we ask Steve this question? There's $502,000 in internal services for this department. Seems a little excessive. Why is that?
Indirect costs.
Of course.
It's indirect.
It's always
costs.
indirect cost,
Building
Steve.
use.
You should just have a sign in the back.
Okay. Seeing no other questions for probation, we need to vote on this.
It's coming.
Just waiting for the vote here.
Commissioner Matuzik, we don't believe we have your vote in. Oh, there it is. Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, next department, prosecutor. Need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Nard. Supported by Zinner. The prosecutor here with the team. So this is going to be for the prosecutor's office for also federal forfeitures, grants, and district court witness fees.
Good evening. Are we ready to proceed, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. I want to thank, first of all the county commissioners and the executive for what we've accomplished, and we're very proud. I'd like to, first of all, thank my staff that's here today, the executive staff that's here today, so you know who they are. I have Sean Angenfeld, she's Chief of Trials and Circuit Court. Everything that goes on in that circuit court is under her domain and her purview. I have my Chief of Operations, Todd Schmitz, been with the county about 14 years, and then with the prosecutor's office afterwards. He was in the court clerk's office under Carmela Sabal. Sean, I apologize, you've been with the county 18 years? Almost 19. I'm in the ballpark, maybe the wrong base. I have Beth Kirshner with me today. To Commissioner Hall's point, she's going to be speaking directly on the child support issues of this county. And she's been with the county 29 and a half years. So I knew her as Beth Naftali many years ago. I also have Kumar Palapu, and he's also one of the chiefs. He handles the district courts. There's 10 district courts in this county, and 19 judges that run those district courts, plus magistrates. And he's responsible for a lot of lawyers running in and out of these district courts every day for what we do as lawyers. In addition, I'd like to introduce you to no, not Kathy. She's been here a long time. Jeff Plymel, he's with our juvenile unit. You've heard a lot about juvenile and that. He's not the chief. The chief is out there working hard. She's running for judge over in Troy and Ferndale, and her success, we're going to have to go replace her, and that's tough to do when you've got so much longevity of somebody being with this county so long. Of course, you guys know Angie Burke. She's my office manager, and she's been toughing it out through these tough times with me. I also have next to me Dawn Freilich. She was with the Bar Association 20 years. In addition, she did everything for the Bar Association, and she's now our communications director. So thank you, commissioners, for what you've done. I have next to her Chris Bly. Chris Bly comes with a host of knowledge, and she's our executive administrative assistant. She worked as in the prosecutor's office out in Oakland County, so we stole one from there. She also worked in the police department, plus she's worked in the probation department. So she comes with a wealth of knowledge of over 20 years in law enforcement. And of course, my chief assistant, Don Frizard. I don't think we need much to talk about him because his wife was in the prosecutor's office for a long time before she became the circuit court judge down in Wayne County. In addition, I've known this woman here for forever, and Kim Shinneman is her name. She's in the cooperative reimbursement. To your point, again, Commissioner Hall, these are the ones that are on the front line collecting the child support for those children instead of throwing them out of the houses. There's so much to say. I was appreciative of every question. I'm glad you put me last. I really am. For the first time, I've actually heard some questions that actually made some sense to me, but the deeper dive has to be done, Commissioner Kleinfeld. So thank you. The staff that I have and the APAs that are here, I did forget my chief of warrants because he's sitting in the second row. JP Hunt. JP Hunt is my chief of warrants. JP comes with a host of knowledge. He was a former police officer in, I think, Miami, Florida.
Gainesville, Florida.
Close enough. Wrong place, but the right state. Gainesville, Florida. So he had that experience and knowledge with the law degree. And a family who came from law, his father, who I knew real well, Gene Hunt, that was in this community for years. He brings with him that expertise we need at the front line on every warrant that's signed. We either have it or we don't, and we don't sign it. It's not fair to anybody. The justice system works both ways. So I want to thank my staff for their hard work. We have been through a whirlwind, and with your support and your help, I thank you, and I mean that in a very sincere way. Now, there's many things on this budget that I can tell you now. I wish I had more time, but I'm not going to do that to you tonight because they're going to make the presentation. This is going to be a first. We're looking at having a motion that's going to come, because I know that this is the discussionary topics, things that you'd consider. But I'm going to include in the motion this time that what's approved by this board and appropriated by this board, that I don't have to keep coming here to ask for things, because that's money that's appropriated for purposes of using to try to commit to what it is that I did. I swore that I'd take care of the community as far as public safety, and I swore I'd do it the best way I know how. So if I don't have the right tools, or I can't get to the tools, even though you gave them to me, and I thank you again, that I'm having a real difficult time if it's not incorporated in the motion for allowing the finance as well as the executive branch to do its job in making sure that those tools come to me in a timely manner so that we can accomplish, all of us, and be proud of what we do. The last thing is that in your information, you'll see that we take care of a lot of things, but the questions that were asked about the Juvenile Justice Center, about why we don't have all the county's cooperation. I mean, I'm telling you now, it's important. We have the resource. We're spending money on it. We should be able to use those beds and surcharge those counties that don't want to build one to come here, and we'll take care of them, but at a premium. So for that, I'm going to introduce you now to Todd Schmitz. It's been a heck of a week, a heck of a month. We've had so many criminal charges coming out of Roseville, East Point, St. Clair Shores tomorrow, and so forth and so on. And you'll see the numbers. Bear with them. It'll go quick, and I promise you, I'll do less talking this time. Thank you.
Good evening. What I'm going to start by doing is just sharing some of the good things we've done with the tools you've already given us. That'll be brief. Next, we'll explain what our budget request is, including the specific cost of it, so we'll go through that. We'll give you a couple of metrics by which you can measure that as you're weighing and balancing all of these requests that you receive. You'll be hearing from some of our other staff members, including when we get to the child support section. Our unit chief is going to give you a number that may shock you, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. Finally, at the end, we'll be happy to stay as long as needed to answer all of your questions. And like we did last year, if we cannot answer a question, we will promptly get you the information you require. So with that, let's start off with what most people think when they think of the prosecutor's office, and that's prosecuting crimes and serving crime victims. What you see on your screen is just some recent headlines from some of the recent cases. These are things that our assistant prosecutors do day in and day out every day. Prosecuting cases, making sure justice is served. One of the things the prosecutor has done in the last year, or since he's been here, is actually given more power to victims to have a say in the resolution of their cases. Now there are more cases than ever where victims, as long as the victim consents and they've received restitutions, then those cases may be resolved as long as the victim is good with that. And assistant prosecuting attorneys have more authority now than they ever have to do that. And that has helped move some of these dockets along more quickly. But there are also things our office does that are invisible that most people don't think of. And thanks to support from the county commission, here's a few of them. One of them is last year the prosecutor's office received more National Association of Counties awards than the prosecutor has ever received in our history. So we got 7 of the county's 13 awards, and that's for good government and innovation. And many of those programs are thanks to the support from the board. Commissioner Brown gave a quote at the time, and I think it was a time that there had previously been some other coverage about the office. So this was a welcome where it said, this national recognition shows great things are happening in Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. And that's a welcome change. In addition to that, a major project that we are implemented and we're still implementing is our digital evidence management platform. We are facing a tremendous volume of digital evidence. Thanks to you, we were able to roll out a system in April. We already have over 230,000 of individual items of digital evidence. That is growing tremendously. We'll speak more about that when we get to our request. Some of the benefits, though, to your constituents is it provides an audit trail. So now there's a clear-cut trail of when we receive evidence from the police, when we view it, what we received and what we didn't receive. We're able to more promptly provide discovery, provide information to the defense as we're required to do by law, because we can email download links to this now. So it is an ongoing project. It is difficult and complicated, involving every police agency, but we have been able to do that at record speed thanks to your support. There are some other things I'll just mention that I won't dwell on, but we've started the process of electronic transmission of warrant requests, and that's not the actual electronic filing yet. We're working on that, but we do receive them electronically now from some police agencies. We have some shared second chairs in our circuit court. So our circuit courts do not all have 2 APAs in them. We are sharing second chairs among the courts, and when we get to that portion of our request, we'll talk more about that, but that's progress. We're the first department in the county to use the existing voice recognition system in the county phone system. We're not always about trying to come up with new technology or spend money. We try to use the tools we have at our disposal, and we did that with the county's existing phone system. It's just that nobody had used the voice recognition feature of that before, and now we do that. When you call our main line, you can actually say the service you're looking for, and it'll help direct you. And finally, we believe we're the first prosecutor's office in Michigan to let crime victims request their crime victims' rights by text message. So when we're meeting with crime victims, or when crime victims are in court, if they haven't yet requested their rights, we can help them do that right there by a simple text message. That's another thing that we've done thanks to support from you. Another thank you that the board deserves is mobile phones. Assistant prosecutors now have phones. That has done 2 things. It's improved communication for our crime victims, police, and others, but it's also improved security for our assistant prosecuting attorneys. We used to have to call witnesses and and victims from our personal cell phones, and as you can imagine, there are some witnesses that it's a risk to call, and if you call where you block your number, then they think it's a telemarketing call and they don't pick up. So having something as basic as a mobile phone has been a big plus to help us try to move cases along more quickly, and again, we thank you for that as well. Now, there are some trends that are affecting our office, and all of these trends require more resources per case. Some of them you hit on in your earlier questions. First of all, there's just much more scrutiny of law enforcement now than there used to be. It's just a fact. There's also a tremendous increase in digital evidence. As an example, let's say that the sheriff's office gets called out on a case. Let's say that there's 3 deputies that end up showing up. Maybe it takes an hour and it's all resolved. For each one of those deputies now, we have 3 video cameras. There's the body cam, there's the squad car front cam, and then there's the backseat camera. So on that 1 hour incident with the 3 deputies out times 3 hours of video, that's potentially 9 hours of video. And that's just one case. Now, I'm not saying we have to watch all 9 hours of that video, but we do have to watch the key parts of that video, and we do pretty much have to share all of that video with defense. And this is growing not just from police body cams, but everybody's got an iPhone with a camera now. Homeowners have the Ring cameras and Nest cams and all the homeowner security cameras. Businesses have security cameras. There's much more digital evidence than there ever was. That's just a fact, and that's something we have to deal with. The Public Defender's Office also has resulted in more resource demands from the Prosecutor's Office. The Public Defender's Office is doing their job in showing up in cases that they need to, but we now need to answer and appear in certain hearings that we didn't necessarily have to do so before. As an example, arraignments and bond hearings. You may have seen some press coverage recently where there was some disagreement about whether bonds were set sufficiently high on certain people that have been arrested. And so we now appear at arraignments and bond hearings for violent cases and other cases. And of course, there's an attorney for the defense that's at all of these. That's a much bigger demand on our time of things we weren't doing before. Also, according to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics, and that's on the internet, in 2021, violent cases in Macomb County have risen. So in 2016, it was 10,084. 2021, it's 10,954. We have 70 open death cases right now. Those are all big demands. Specialty courts we'll be talking about in a little bit, and our Chief of District Courts, Kumar, will address that. But also school threats have gone up, and you've seen the coverage of this in the paper. Those are very demanding cases. In 2018, we had 22. In 2022, we have 73. It's more than tripled. Macomb County is prosecuting more death threats cases than any other county. And that's because we take these threats seriously because the consequences can be so severe. But this is another reason that it takes time and resources to do what we do. Another good thing that's happened that we've implemented is we expect now to bring in, at least for the year 2023, $250,000 in revenue, and that's from billing for certain services through a grant from the Department of Human Services through our juvenile unit and our child protection unit. And we have the chief of our, we'll be able to answer questions on that if needed. But you can see the billings that we've received from this year. We just started getting it ramped up. We now have 2 units on board, and we expect roughly over $20,000 a month to come in from that. Okay, now we'll get to the part. Here's a couple of metrics you can use by which to evaluate our request. The Prosecutors Association did a study. They released it in April of 2022, and we can get a copy of that if it would be helpful to you. But in 2018, they determined that the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office was understaffed by about 19%. If our full request were to be granted, we would still be below the Prosecutors Association benchmark, but we would at least be getting closer to that. So here's what our specific request is, and our request has been significantly narrowed from what was made to the Finance Department, and that's thanks to some very helpful information that was provided by the Executive's Office. Also, the fact that the budget for 2023 has been released, and so we're able to see what else is out there and has been asked for, and some of the good questions that have been asked by this board. But our request is for 6.5 full-time equivalents out of the general fund, and from a grant fund, it would be 3 full-time equivalents, but that's paid 2/3 by the grant, so it would really be about 1/3 for the general fund. Those specifically are 3 administrative coordinators. They make approximately $56,000 a year. 1 assistant prosecuting attorney and 1 assistant prosecuting attorney 2. All of those are union staff members. Every one of these positions that we are asking for is a union county employee. Here's the specifics regarding cost. Looks like the alignment on the conversion didn't quite happen right, but the gist of it is in 2022 our budget was about $14 million. The recommended budget from the Executive Office is about $15.5 million. If our request were to be granted in full, that would be an additional for staff of $785,000 and some non-staff cost, which would be professional services and some equipment, and we'll talk about that, of about $95,000. That would be offset by the $250,000 we expect to bring in through the grants and through the billing for a net of $630,000 about. So the percent increase, so that shows you what the increase is. It would be roughly, and it looks like it got cut off or clipped here, but approximately 11% of our increase. The overall is about 15.3%. But about 11% of that we calculate seems to be that the proposed increase in salaries that have been proposed. Out of the grant-funded budget from the federal cooperative reimbursement, that's the child support portion. So the additional grant funds would be $154,000. That would be paid by the state, but there would be $79,000 coming from the general fund if that was to be approved. And what happened here? So we provided you the presentation, but it looks like when it got converted and then put on here, our alignment is quite a bit off on that. What we were trying to convey on this one here is just to give you some percentages, and maybe Kyle, if you can help out with that one when you get a chance, just so people can see. But the Finance Department, according to the Macomb Daily, the request was about a 30% increase. Office of County Executive, 25%. Extension, 22%. Corporation Counsel, 17%. IT Department, 16%. And the Prosecutor's Office is 15%. So just so you can see where we would come in that rank if the request was to be granted. For staffing, just so you can see the difference, in 2022 we have 96.5. If this was all to be granted in 2023, it would be 104, and that gives you the breakdown there. Some metrics that you can use by comparing with other counties. And so in 2023, this would get us close to what Oakland County has as far as staff per 10,000 population. So they've got 1.3. If everything was to be granted, it would be 1.2. Also, dollars spent for the prosecutor's office per population. This would again get us closer to what Oakland County is, but we'll still be below them. Why is the comparison to Oakland County important? Because the crimes in Macomb and Oakland County are similar. You can see from this graph here, the total crimes in 2021 in Macomb County is about 28,500, and in Oakland County it's about 30,000. That's according to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics. If you go by population, we're at actually 3.3 crimes per 100, whereas Oakland County is 2.4. And so since the crimes are similar and the amount is similar, then it would make sense that the amount of resources spent on prosecuting these crimes would be similar. We do have some non-staff requests in the budget, and so here's the highlights of those. One of them is regarding a professional services contract for a person who would perform the services of grant writing, budget and spending analysis, and strategic planning. This person has been helping us on a voluntary basis, but that can't continue. He's already helped bring in more than $250,000. This request is not budget neutral, it's budget positive. We believe that he will easily be able to help us bring in more than $250,000 next year in grants. It would be logical to ask, why can't you just reassign an existing person to do grants? Why do you need a person set aside to do that? There are a lot of grants in the law enforcement area. There are many opportunities to do things like the commission was asking about earlier, different ways to handle things. If we don't have a dedicated person whose job it is to focus on these things, it just isn't going to get done. It is a practical matter, difficult to have somebody set aside their docket from prosecuting cases to try to track down grants and use the state's Byzantine grant system to get that done, because when it's a demand of returning a victim's call or preparing a motion or working on the grant, an APA is just, they're always going to go with the case. So this is a cost-effective way to get this service done. Wayne County has a full-time grant writer that's paid over $100,000 a year, but she has brought in millions for the county in grants. It has been reported in the Macomb Daily that there is an opportunity in Macomb County to bring in more grant money than we've been bringing in before. And so this is our proposal as a solution to do that. Next is a professional services contract for legal services, and the prosecutor is requesting this specifically in the area of collective bargaining and human resources advice. The prosecutor has found a case that says the prosecutor is a co-employer, and he has reserved his rights as a co-employer. And what that case holds is that if the prosecutor is not involved in the collective bargaining process, then there is a risk that the collective bargaining agreement may not be enforceable against the prosecutor's office. Specifically, there are two things that he would like to negotiate, and there could be more, but one would be an increase in job security by clarifying the promotion to and return from higher positions, such as when a prosecutor transfers from being an APA to administration or back, and also when a prosecutor transfers to being a unit chief or back from being a unit chief. Right now, those lines cross between two different bargaining units, and it's not so clearly defined how that would work. Second is to have a unit chief pay premium and negotiate for that to clarify what happens when you have a unit chief who is supervising members of the same bargaining unit, which frequently happens. And generally, in HR, you try not to have people in the same bargaining unit supervising others in the same bargaining unit. And so that's an example of one of the things that he's seeking legal advice to achieve. Third is we have a request for iPads for APAs. Most evidence now is digital, and we have to work through our case management system and work on our laptops at the same time as dealing with evidence. We're also on Zoom hearings quite a bit. And in some of the courts now, we are actually in person and on Zoom at the same time. So depending on the scenario, we may be doing a Zoom hearing from the prosecutor's office at the court because there's a victim or somebody else who's not on premises, and they're allowed by the court to do that. But then in other cases, we have to run in and go into the courtroom because there's people in person. It is extremely difficult to view digital evidence online, police reports, flip to certain pages, show somebody the photo to say, I thought you said the person was in blue, but here's the red jacket here. Doing that all on the laptop while you're on Zoom. And so we believe one cost-effective way to address that is to also use iPads. We are working in constructive ways with the IT department and the finance department to try to find out a creative solution for that. So for the administrative coordinators, we're requesting 3. The areas they would be working, just so you know, there'd be members of the AFSCME union. They make about $56,000. They would be working in the discovery unit, juvenile unit, district court unit, and conviction integrity unit. Discovery, because we're seeing just a vast increase in the amount of discovery, as we explained. In the juvenile unit, because we are now have implemented the raise the age law, we have more juveniles just by definition because 17-year-olds are juveniles now. In the district court unit, because of the amount of cases there, and in the conviction integrity unit, because that requires a certain degree of confidentiality. In some respect, that's sort of like in internal affairs, because they are looking for ways and evidence to address issues if somebody has been wrongfully convicted, and there's a certain degree of confidentiality that needs to happen with those files and what's being investigated. And right now, we don't have a dedicated person to do that. Regarding the APAs, I'd like to introduce Kumar Palapu. Kumar is the chief of our district court, and between Kumar or Sean, Sean, that'd be great. So Sean Hengeveld, who's our chief of trials and courts, and just an example, she came from meeting with the medical examiner this afternoon about a death case, and now she's here doing this. So that's an example of some of the things that our APAs do every day.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon. Again, my name's Sean Hengeveld. I'm the Chief of Trials and Chief of Circuit Court.
Before we start, Commissioner Hall, I believe, has a question for Todd.
I did. Thank you very much.
Before you sit down, Todd.
Not that we wouldn't much prefer to hear you than Todd, but that's not the case.
And why don't we do that? If we have any questions for Todd, let's ask those right now.
And also, I will be sticking, I'm not going anywhere, so there may be some things, there's only a few more slides left, but they may actually answer your questions that we have prepared too. So
they don't.
Okay.
You hit it, well, the first thing was you were looking for iPads for the ADAs. They don't have those now, is that what you're saying?
Right, all we have is laptops now, we do not have iPads. And so many county employees have dual monitors on their desks. We do at the office, we have dual monitors because of the amount of evidence and things we need to do. But when you're in court, you don't have that dual monitor. All you've got is your laptop. And so it would serve as, in effect, as a dual monitor, but also make it easy. You could pull up pictures or video, you could show it to the judge, you can show it to defense, you can show it to a witness. It's much easier and less cumbersome than doing it with a laptop or trying to project on the in-court screen.
Okay, thank you. The other question was the 3 administrative coordinators that popped up on here, Discovery, Juvenile District, and Conviction Integrity Unit. Who is doing that now?
Right now, we have staff in the Discovery Unit right now, but they're facing an increased volume of discovery. We have 1 staff person in the Juvenile Unit now, but there are more juveniles because of the raise the age law. And we have staff handling district court right now, but there are more pleas to be entered. And on the conviction integrity unit, we do not have a designated person. We have an administrative person who is helping out in that area in addition to her other duties, but we do not have an existing person right now. But in these areas, it's not that these are not being addressed at all right now. We're just trying to do it better.
Thank you. Lastly, the professional services contract, that was a person? Or
Yes,
was that
so
a
it would
fee?
go through the contract routing process as required. The issue on this one, though, is we've attempted to use the contract routing process, and it has not made it to the board for approval. And so...
Well, the problem I have with just the definition that's listed here, every department head in Macomb County could come in and ask for a professional service contract person.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
So Commissioners, any questions for Todd? Todd, we'll just keep you up there just so we can ask any questions, because Commissioner Matuzak is next here, and I believe she has one for you as well.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Todd. I will admit it is late in the day, and you said a whole lot of words. How many people above and beyond the executive's proposed budget are you looking for?
Out of the general fund budget, 6.5.
6.5, okay, and then 3 out of the grant.
3 out of the grant, that is 2/3 grant funded and 1/3 county, so if you count that as 1.
All right, and that's the total over and
That's the
above
ask.
the executive's recommended budget that you're looking for?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no other speakers for Todd? I think we're good.
Okay. So again, my name is Sean Hengeveld. I'm the chief trial attorney. I oversee and supervise all of the APAs that are in circuit court. So I'm the chief of trials in circuit court and the circuit courts themselves. The circuit court division handles all the felony and then the accompanying misdemeanors that come along with it when it comes to circuit court. There's currently 12 circuit courts, including probate court. There are currently 11 first chair prosecutors. Those are our principal trial attorneys. They're typically the attorneys that have been in our office the longest and have the most experience. And then coupled with them, we have 6 second chair assistant prosecuting attorneys in circuit court with them. Probate court is staffed with 1 assistant prosecutor. The assistant prosecutors in circuit court have a great deal of responsibilities that they have to attend to every day. They include pretrials motions, evidentiary hearings, probation violation hearings, plea negotiations. They're responsible for keeping all of the witnesses and the victims, including all law enforcement officers, abreast of what's going on in their particular cases. They're responsible for returning all of their phone calls to all of those same individuals. They're responsible for returning all of their emails, meeting with victims, meeting with witnesses, prepping witnesses for trials, evidentiary hearings, and discussing with them what they'd like to see as far as a resolution in their cases. They're also responsible for consulting with victim advocates that are assigned for those victims on each one of those cases. They are also responsible for obviously maintaining an open line of communication with defense attorneys and of course with the court staff in the courtrooms that they're assigned to. In addition to all of those duties, oftentimes we have prosecutors in circuit court that are working double duty. They're taking on additional responsibilities besides their courtroom responsibilities within the office. They include participation in treatment courts, participation on the major crimes unit when it comes to reviewing and authorizing warrants, volunteering their participation in the training of less experienced prosecutors in our office, and covering dockets for their coworkers if those coworkers are in trials, on vacation, or in training themselves. You should also know that there are 14 special units within the office. The majority of our special units are staffed by just 1 prosecutor, and oftentimes those prosecutors in the special units, they will have to attend a multitude of different courts within the county, both circuit court and district court. So they're constantly in and out of our office making sure that they have their files to be able to go to each one of those necessary courts to cover their files and their dockets and make sure that they meet with and consult with all of the police officer witnesses, lay witnesses, and victims. In addition to that, those special unit prosecutors, just because of the nature of where they are assigned and which unit they are assigned to, they carry with them additional duties as well, including attending care house interviews for forensics on child witnesses, where they have to be specially interviewed pursuant to the Michigan Governor's Task Force on Child Abuse. They have to meet with law enforcement regarding multifaceted drug cases. So oftentimes they're going to police departments to meet with and see evidence of those multifaceted drug cases. They often are helping departments draft protocols for their digital forensic labs to make sure there's no interference by other officers who might not be forensic analysts, so that there's no chain of custody issues later on when we have to present that information to a jury. They often have to give seminars or have meetings with seniors on how to protect themselves from scams and frauds. They meet with law enforcement to discuss and sign a warrant, whether it's JP down in the warrants division or those of us that are part of the major crimes warrant review team. And they give legal updates to each police department within county to ensure that they're aware of the current law. Currently, Emil Saman, who is part of our appellate department, is responsible for training all of our police departments. He, just to give you an idea, he handles full-time the appeals that come in to our office. Once there's been a conviction or there's been a plea, he handles all of the appellate issues, and he also then moves around the county and visits all the police departments to ensure that every shift, every officer is trained with the most up-to-date legal case law. I know, and of course I appreciate, and I've had many, many prosecutors come to me since you all granted our office the several additional prosecutor positions that you did, and of course we all appreciate that. All of these things that I've outlined for you, it's a lot of work. I will tell you, it's a lot of work. As Mr. Lucido and Todd said just a minute ago, I was just at the medical examiner's office. I'm prosecuting a child homicide case that's going to be going to preliminary exam in just 2 weeks. I just spent 2.5 hours with our medical examiner to make sure that I'm prepared for her testimony and she's prepared for her testimony. I do that in addition to other cases that I am personally prosecuting, and all of our prosecutors share duties. The number of prosecutors that we have as a result of you all granting them has been wonderful, and it's been extremely helpful. There's still a need for more. We have only 6 second chair prosecutors to be able to share all of these duties with the first chair prosecutors in our office. And so in order to properly attend to all of the victims' needs in all of the cases, it's necessary to have a properly staffed prosecutor's office. So that's it.
Sean, how many APAs do we currently have right now?
I think we have 64 in the
64?
general fund, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Your first chair.
In circuit court?
Yeah.
Okay, or split between our first and second chairs.
Well, I was going to get to the second chair. I'm curious, just let's assume the second chair doesn't exist. How many cases assigned to the first chair?
Did we pull those stats?
No, but we can get them.
We can get those stats for you.
Okay.
Todd's the statistics guy.
Okay. So I'm assuming the way that you talk about the second chair, they're all assigned to the first chair, but they share the duties.
They do. That's correct. So the first chair is the principal trial attorney in that circuit court. Ultimately, whatever ends up happening in that circuit court as far as a resolution, whether it's trial or whether it's plea or dismissal or whatever the case may be, falls on the shoulder of the circuit court first chair prosecutor. The second chair prosecutor obviously does their fair share of trials as well, and pleas and negotiations and so on. The first chair is responsible for assigning which cases the second chair will handle and which case will be maintained and handled by the first chair.
Okay. Just so you know, my son's a prosecutor.
That's what I understand. In
Yeah.
Wayne County?
And he laughed at the second chair thing. That was What do you mean second chair? So clearly they don't have that down in Wayne County. They may in Oakland County. Do they all have second chairs in Oakland, do you know?
I don't know that they all have second chairs in Oakland County, but I do know that there are some that do serve as a second chair.
Could you find out what percentage of their first chairs have second chairs?
I will do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm told that, that Don can address the Wayne County question about the second chairs. He was previously in Wayne County, but I will find out the answer to your
So's
question.
half your team, I understand.
But I will find out the answer to your question about Oakland County.
By the way, stop doing that. They're getting upset down there.
We've definitely been able to recruit some talent, that's for sure. Does your son want to come to Macomb County?
Not as long as I'm sitting here, he can't, no.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
Commissioner Brown.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the information, and
Of course.
it's interesting, the information that Todd presented comparing comparable crime statistics between us and Oakland County. Oakland County's much larger than ours. Their population is much larger than ours, but yet the crimes are greater in our county.
It seems that.
So that's pretty interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting
So
and sad.
It's creating a lot of work, right? There's just a lot more work to be done, and we need to support our law enforcement, certainly, and this county will never be the ones to defund law enforcement, police, and all the rest. My question, I got a couple of questions. The special units, those are optional units created by the office, or are those specialty courts created by the court that you have to cover?
Well, so there's two different questions there.
Okay.
There are special units that are created within our office to address particular types of cases. For
Okay.
instance, criminal sexual conduct cases. I think that the auto theft unit is a grant-funded position unit.
I'm familiar with that.
And so on. And then there are specialty courts, which are created by the individual courts in the county or districts.
So the special units within your office are just basically job specialization, like an assembly line. Many workers assembling a car, but they got special people designed specifically for that unit alone.
That's correct.
And that's all their responsibilities are?
I don't want to say that's all their responsibilities because that sounds as though
They're solely dedicated to the
Yeah,
to
and
that.
they're only focused on one task. And I want to make
Well, that's
sure.
not necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that's not a bad thing, right? I mean,
It's great to be specialized in their knowledge, for sure. But I just want to make sure that the board understands that there are many tasks contained within being a member of a particular unit in our office.
yeah. And especially it's kind of deceiving because it's actually a unit of one. It's like the Army, right? Army of one, because you have one person only. 'Cause that's all you have.
Some of our units are single members.
Yeah. The question about the second chairs. Some judges say second chairs are a luxury that you can have because you got the first chair running the cases and the second chair is prepping other cases that are coming online or trying to get them dismissed so they don't have to come before the court to tie up their time, their time before the bench, I guess, officially. Is that an accurate description? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's how it's been described to me.
Sure, there's a definite benefit of having a second chair in the court, primarily because you can move the docket along faster in any one particular day that you're in court. You've got.
That means helps
20
people get justice more quickly
I
rather
believe
than
so.
delaying it.
I believe so. Well, and it also ensures that every witness and every victim is contacted because you have, if you're lucky enough to be in a court that has a second chair, you're lucky enough to have 2 points of contact for that particular court and that case. And so I would hope that you're able to reach a prosecutor if you're a victim and you have a question, and you'll get the answer to the question.
Okay. You mentioned the medical examiner. You're over at the medical examiner's office, and I've heard from your office, from some of your very skilled team in victim child prosecution cases, and I'm not sure what the title was. And we had a discussion about the issue about getting the relationship between our county and other counties when crimes are committed here, but the victim dies outside our county, and getting the body back here for a variety of benefits, the witnesses and the family members and all the rest. What is I guess, was anything been done about that? I'm talking about the executive's office and and they seem to think that it was been working it out and trying to been worked out, and didn't seem to be as, seemed it was going to be handled, but, you know, it's out of my area and it's not my responsibility, and so I figured, well, it sounded like it was going pretty all right, but can you speak to that at all? Just briefly, because it's not too germane to our budget here, but I'm curious
Just as
to
an
know since I
update.
got you here.
Sure, and you and I actually have talked personally about this issue.
Yes.
Because there was recently a case where Molly Zapatel is the chief of our child protection unit, that had a case where injuries were inflicted on a very young child in Shelby Township, and the child was transported, and there was an autopsy that was conducted because the death happened in Wayne County. And the hope was that because the injuries were inflicted here in Macomb County, that we would be able to retain the case and be able to prosecute it as the ultimate death here in Macomb. Because the statute says that wherever the death occurs, that's where the autopsy takes place. I believe that in order to streamline a case like that, it would be helpful to have the medical examiner in the county where the injuries were inflicted to also be able to conduct the autopsy for a number of reasons, and we've talked about this as well. Primarily, it's because the prosecutor and the medical examiner, and I know this just from my experience today, having just literally come from the medical examiner, because of proximity, it makes it a lot easier for the medical examiner and the prosecutor to meet in person and have an actual discussion sitting across the table from one another and reviewing documents right there in front of them, versus, say, us going down to the medical examiner's office in Wayne County. So I'm hopeful, and I believe that the lines of communication are open with Dr. Dan Spitz, our chief medical examiner, and he has at least indicated or alluded to the fact that he would be open to discussing what sort of arrangement can be made in that sort of circumstance that I just talked about regarding Molly Zapatel's case.
But our medical examiner was happy to be accommodating like he is to other counties, but he needs cooperation from the other prosecutor. And I understand Oakland County is kind of the one that's not cooperating. We won't talk about it anymore. But anyway, if there's something that you need as an initiative, or maybe we need a state law to codify this instead of making it optional for prosecutors to do that, to help, because I can only imagine the horror that a family goes through to have that whole, be involved in that whole issue, but to have it made more complicated by stringing that out unnecessarily so because somebody just wants to keep them in there for the business. I just don't understand, Commissioner or Prosecutor.
If I may, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just to your point, real quick, every time the baby case, and these are real critical cases. In fact, they never used to prosecute these years ago when they just thought it was a SIDS death, but they're not, because mother is strung out on heroin, the baby's alone, the mother rolls over on the baby and kills the baby. What they do is bring the child down to Children's Hospital because it's a specialized unit down there. And once the baby is left down there, it's out of our care, custody, and control. And now the medical examiner's down there because the death occurred down in Wayne County. We don't get the benefit of having our resources over here. Not that there's a whole monumental amount of them. I mean, they spike. There's times and periods. But once we lose because they go down to Children's, if Children's Hospital was here, could you imagine our medical examiner's team, what would happen? They would be bringing Wayne County babies in if we had the children's hospitals here, and it would be a nightmare. But that being said, we have a relationship where we know the protocol with our medical examiner. We don't have that same relationship, and it benefits our victims, which is that dead baby, because they at least now get the benefit of having the case heard for the child.
Thank you, Prosecutor.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown, any other questions, budget specific?
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for indulging me.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to what you said about you came from the coroners, speaking with the coroner, and you had a lot of things on your mind. Since I've been elected for almost 2 years now, I didn't really used to read the paper much. I do like the physical paper. And I read it. I read what is online also a lot. But when I can, once in a while, I'll pick up a paper. And I picked up a paper, Macomb Daily, of course, and well, that's what I like. And there were three stories about murder. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's just getting worse and worse. And so I really appreciate all that you go through to take care of our citizens and get justice for them and try to help them. I really appreciate it because when I did critical care, I might have a critical care situation with 2 or 3 patients, but it was done, taken care of. But your stuff goes on and on for a while.
It does.
X amount of time. And I appreciate it. We all, I know we all appreciate you, and we appreciate the coordination and how you work together. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sean, a couple questions. And this also might be for Todd, but the evidence software. So I know we implemented that earlier this year. Obviously, it's just increasing every day. It seems like even now with your request for the iPads for all the APAs, I always thought technology would save the amount of employees that we have for the county. It seems to be costing the county more money because we have to have more technology.
True.
But with all these APAs having the iPads, and I know you said 64 currently, are all of our APAs, are there any vacancies in there? Are they fully staffed?
No, we have no vacancies throughout the entire office right now.
You do not?
So while some offices are able to make do with the difficulties in having the vacancies, and that is a challenge in and of itself, we have 100% capacity right now.
Okay. The arraignments, I know, getting back to technology and Zoom, I would think that with some of these arrangements where you don't have to be in court, you can do them via Zoom. That would save time. But do you have to physically, it just depends on the court, when you have to physically be there or when you can do them virtually?
So it's unfortunate because there are some courts that have, not many anymore, because thank goodness, in my opinion, we're back in person. It makes practicing law and prosecuting cases and talking to victims and witnesses and so on, and defense attorneys, it makes it a lot easier when you're in person, when you're face-to-face with somebody. But there are several courts, especially in district court, and I think Kumar can probably speak to this, there are several courts that are hybrid courts, and like Todd was saying, Roseville's a perfect example. I was just down there handling a case just last week, and it, for lack of a better term, it's a bit chaotic. It's kind of a zoo. There are prosecutors that are sitting in a conference room, and they're running Zoom of what's going on in the court next door to them, and then there might be a court officer that runs in and says, hey, Judge so-and-so needs you in the courtroom in person. And so they're trying to negotiate on Zoom at the same time that they're expected to be in person in the courtroom.
And that's at the discretion of the judge?
Yes. And it just depends on how each individual judge wishes to do their courts. Because there's also jails from multiple counties that are Zooming in so they don't have to bring in person defendants. So that's happening as well.
Okay. Seeing no other questions here for Sean, can move on. I don't know who else is going to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kumar Palapu. I'm the Chief of District Courts. I have 12 full-time assistant prosecutors and 3.5 part-time prosecutors. We service 10 courts with about 19 judges. We're in 3 of the top 10 cities in Michigan. We're in Warren, which is 3rd, Sterling Heights, which is 4th, and Clinton Township is the 8th largest. So we're very busy. My assistant prosecutors, they deal with misdemeanors, child abuse cases, domestic violence cases, drug cases, assaultive cases, but they also handle felonies, anything from assault with a dangerous weapons to assault with intent to murders, carjackings, very, very serious felony crimes. Additionally, one of the things that I really was here to talk to everyone about is specialty courts. Mr. Brown, you had asked whether these specialty courts, whether they be in circuit or in district, are a drain on our abilities or our prosecutors. And I have to say yes, but in a good way. Judge Biernat said before that for many years, these specialty courts didn't have a prosecutor, but they really need one. All the research shows that not only are specialty courts important because they take someone out of a jail cell where they don't really need to be and it's very expensive, and they put them in a place where they can be monitored, and a lot of people just need second chance or third chance. They're not violent people. But when I spoke to Judge Toya, he said if you look at every case that comes through that building over there, 90% have some sort of substance abuse issue attributed to them, which is really problematic. And he said many of the cases, and the future really is, with these type of cases and these type of issues, every courtroom should really have some sort of specialty component. So as far as what your questions were for circuit, there are approximately, from my numbers that I got yesterday and today, 115 members in those 5 treatment courts. Those treatment courts, whether they be mental health, sobriety, Veterans Treatment Court, which I'm a part of because I'm a veteran, they all have individuals there. And I think Ms. Kleinfeld said something about, would they be a state problem because they really should be in prison, or are they jail? And I'll say from what I've seen over the course of the 8 years that I've been doing this here in Macomb, that a majority of people would likely be placed into jail or just probation. And then recidivism is a significant problem. One is if they just go back in the community without any help, they're probably just going to come back again with whatever crimes they're facing again. And if they go to jail, of course, that's not really helping anyone, because that's just placing them there for a short period of time, and then when they come back out, no treatment, we're back with the problem. There are very few that I've ever seen that are just straight off to prison if they don't enter the treatment court program. And as far as the treatment courts in district court, we've got 205 across 9 treatment courts. Most of them, we've got 4 in Clinton. Sterling's got 1, Roseville's got 1, Warren's got probably the largest in the state with 72 members. But those are all saving people from being in beds in the jail for any period of time. So I'll say that this is the only time right now where all of these treatment courts in district have been manned on a consistent basis, where we have prosecutors there. Before, we always had this need. All the judges would be like, can we please have a prosecutor in our court because we need you? And there's a number of reasons why they need us. Research, yes, says it's better if we're there. But also, if they want to get grants, they're required by the grant to have a memorandum of understanding, which has one of us on it and signed into it. So they're going to have trouble getting a grant or keeping their program alive without us there. So I'll say this, it's been a stressor for the prosecutor's office to be in all of these programs, but it's been a positive thing and easier since we've had more people. Now, as far as what I'm going to be able to do come January, I don't know if I'll be able to man all of them, just because I won't have as many prosecutors. It's been, I've been able to accommodate the need from all of the different district court programs because I had those part-time, the part-time prosecutors that were under the CFIUS grant. And I believe I'm going to lose them all one way or another by January or soon thereafter. And I think it's an important thing for a number of reasons. And that's why one of our asks is that we really want to be able to accommodate those for those judges, those courts, all of your communities, because they're necessary, and we don't want to waste money with the jail, right? The other thing that I wanted to bring up is, as far as what I was hearing with the second chairs, one of the most important things, and the thing that was, I guess, life-changing for my career, was I was in such a busy court early on many years ago that I was a second chair, which meant that I got training from my first chair. And one of the issues we've always had is who's training these prosecutors. And since Prosecutor Lucido came in, he's been able to have you all give us more prosecutors, which helped, and put second chairs in and start the training process again. Because every time we lose someone, like Gene Cloud or Dara Slanik, it's a huge hole in our office, and we lose that because we haven't had the training up until like we're having now, and we're trying to really put into and reconstitute the way it's supposed to be. So when we lose someone like them, someone's already trained up and have done it with them. But I believe that's as far as what I've got for you today. I wanted to make
Kumar,
sure
I
I
have a
answered
quick
you some
question
questions.
for
Sure.
you.
Yeah,
I
of
think there's
course.
a couple speakers here as well. But in regards to those grants, you said the locals would get the grants if we had the APAs there in those courts?
They, as far as I understand, from most of the grants that we've ever looked at and the ones they have a memorandum of understanding where they have to have certain people on there. They've got to have probation sign on. They have to have the judge sign on, of course. Us, they have to have a prosecutor sign on to that. I know that those are necessary in circuit court, so I believe I might be on the one for Veterans Court, but it really is I'm working under a PCP
So what I'm getting at is that the locals benefit with the grant, but the county has to spend the money to put the APA in that court. Is that correct?
Oh, no. So that's the thing about the grants that come from, that we're on the memorandum of understanding. We don't get anything from their grants, and we never have. And that was always, from my understanding, why there was a unwilling office years ago to put a prosecutor in a court, because from that perspective it's just a waste of a resource. Like, yes, it would be nice to accommodate, but we're not going to put someone there full time. And I think every once in a while, the one judge that got lucky with that, or two, Judge Santina in Roseville, every once in a while got someone for a sobriety court just because we were there that day. And then Judge Fuca, because her Veterans Court was so large that every once in a while maybe I would go there.
It just doesn't seem fair. The prosecutor wants to probably say something about this, because it just seems like the county has to fund this within our own general fund dollars.
You know what?
But the
These
locals are
questions-
So I never knew this. This is news to me.
These questions were spot on, and that's what I appreciated. So in circuit court, we have 5 courts up there. The mental health court was brand new, and now the new judge took it over, which thank God she did, because it's so the memorandum of understanding comes from the state of Michigan. It is a document that I have to sign as the county prosecutor, guaranteeing and assuring that I'll have a prosecutor there. Otherwise, they won't get the funding. To your point, Commissioner, that's where the problem lies. They didn't put anything in there for the prosecutor when they have it on an out docket day, which means a day when they're not doing their criminal docket. And now we're sending people over there where they're supposed to be preparing for trial, meeting with witnesses, talking to police. And thank God we had the CFIS grant. And even though it's a pain to do those reports, Steve, we do them because we ended up with 2 prosecutors at the state money that came down to Macomb. Thank you, David, for that, filling out all the paperwork. But we're going to lose them. That's
Right.
done. It's all done.
Well, Commissioner Kleinfeld made the point earlier about
what is it?
saving us money, costing us money, who's benefiting, and that's what triggered that for me. But maybe this is something that our lobbyists should be talking to our representatives to the state, because it just doesn't make sense.
So we have an obligation. How would we look in the newspapers? How would we look with the press and the public if we're not going to send a prosecutor to have a sobriety court, a drug court, a veterans court, a mental health court, and whatever else they come up with? But truth be told, we're going to champion those causes, even if I got to go over there for this reason. I was asked by the circuit court bench when I took office, do you plan on being here for probation violations? How does it look without somebody representing the people of the state of Michigan on behalf of the people when somebody's being violated for probation and the judge says, well, where's the prosecutor? They didn't do that in the past. Wasn't done before I got here. They didn't have anybody in the specialty courts either. And it's a blessing that we have a veterans court, which is the one I forgot, because them guys come home and those ladies come home. Nobody knows what the hell they went through. That's why we need it there. And we're going to stand guard because they stood guard for us.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. On that
for
same
Kumar.
topic then. So they have to sign a memorandum of understanding saying that you guarantee a prosecutor to be there.
That's correct.
Is that light duty? Can you send a junior, just a new attorney out of law school down there to sign the paperwork for them and keep your more experienced prosecutors where you need them most? I mean,
No, so you have to meet as a part of the team. They all have to meet and come to some determination on how to deal with each individual if they get into trouble. And there's a lot of training that goes into that. So you have to know about testing. You have to know about the national research that goes along with it. So with Veterans Court, I ended up getting the opportunity to go to the national convention, which was in D.C. a couple times, right? Judge Toya was there, Judge Fuca was there, we all were there. Great research. It's a really great program. But there's training that goes into it that really it takes a really long time to get up to speed on the training and be there and be, you wouldn't want to put someone new there because they don't have any life experience or prosecutor experience to know all the details of what's good for
training
that,
like everything else.
that person. Yeah, there's training.
And you need bodies there anyway. If you don't have the bodies, you can't send even a junior staffer there if you don't have them. So I understand.
No, and it's difficult. Like with some of those things, they are always doing it on a day where they're trying not to be busy. But with like Judge Mike Servito, sometimes we'd be doing it in the middle of a trial on a Thursday. I'd be in trial, then I'd go straight into that for an hour and a half, and then come back in and do trial again.
Was it a question of scheduling? I mean, if someone said, I don't know who said it, said, well, they schedule these things on days when everyone's in, maybe it's on Monday or something. Couldn't they do them on Fridays when, most of the court's quiet? I mean, and if it's a scheduling issue, then we can have a talk with our local communities about trying to.
So the scheduling issue has been kind of a nightmare with the district courts as well, because they have certain team members from, let's say, the VA that have to be because they're the VA, let's say they have to be at Judge Fuca's Veterans Court, and then they have to be at Judge Michael Servito's. So they can't be in two places at one time, and there's that one person allocated. And they have that issue across all the treatment courts with whatever team members they have. So it's really trying to herd cats to find where they need to put, like what kind of scheduling they need to get for 5-6 team members all on one day. And it's just, that's the best they've been able to do.
I mean, we don't have unlimited resources. We never have, and we never will. I mean, so it's a matter of scheduling priorities, right? Who's going to get in the line first in terms of the attention from the prosecutor's office with the prosecutors you have, right?
That's
you
correct.
just had a grant, you lost it. And so we give you these 6.5 positions. Is that going to make that problem better?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Were
Yeah,
they all going to be specialty prosecutors? And how's that going to?
Well,
you're just going to shift resources to the specialty courts then?
No, never. I mean, there are a couple, what I had in mind with a couple of the part-time prosecutors that we might be able to get back is that they're perfect for trying to slot them in certain specialty courts. Because we have some places where we don't have a problem finding a prosecutor that's already there if the scheduling works out. But there are other times when things are so back to back to back that there's no way that a prosecutor is going to be able to accommodate the treatment court and still do the rest of their docket, both in court and then, of course, all the prep work that goes after court and in between.
Thank you. I understand the need. And it's really been, this whole process has been interesting with the prosecutor because I've been on this job a long time, and I've never heard anything from the prosecutor's office about any of this.
And that's the problem.
And you've got good people. You've been working down there. We got staff that have been down there working a long time. And yet, these issues were never raised.
And one of the things that I see that, so Kim Worthy said, let's say, and this is sort of a different topic, but it's going into the same thing. There's so many things happening since COVID, and partially because technology, that, or jail reform, and some of the trends that we're looking at right now, that we're having this huge change all at once. And what I was going to say, and what I've noticed a long time ago, is Kim Worthy mentioned technology 6 years ago. And in 2016, she said, I need more people because I've got to look at all of this body cam that's coming in. That's all she knew at that time. No one knew that it's body cam, phones, ring camera. You could have a simple case. Now, suddenly, you're looking at this much information, or really it's online now, that just what used to be just a simple case is now reams of information or just video. And that's aside from the fact that if they take a phone and they search that phone, everything on that individual's phone is discoverable. So we've got to look at it all, especially if it's a child case, to make sure there's no child porn on there because we can't give it to through discovery. Or if there's none of that, we still have to do redactions because there's personally identifiable information, which of course we know has been a nightmare for the clerk, and trying to restructure everything. So I think we're sort of in this phase and why this looks like it's a big ask, but it's really just we're trying to get in line and ahead of what is going to be a nightmare if we don't have the people that we need in place.
Going back to my schedule, but wouldn't scheduling help us with some of the budget, some of the need? I mean, if they had scheduled our thing better, you could be able to enable you to stretch your resources a little bit thinner. I mean, you wouldn't have to have the perfect 100% bench that, you wouldn't have the perfect staff. Maybe you get by with, Because, you can't get everything, Rome wasn't built in a day sometimes, too. I mean, every department across this county can, they do a lot of good things, and they can do even more good things if they had, more people, more staff, everything else.
Well, I know just from, let's say, a drug court standpoint, where you got Judge Fratercangeli, Judge Chupa, and then they also do some sobriety courts that you have in Roseville with Judge Hakeem and Toko. That issue has been they share team members for their their MDT. So they can only have those people doing certain things certain days because they can't be in more places than one at a time, right? And they've been fighting over their scheduling. And so
There's only so many days in the week.
There's only
right?
so many days and so many people, right? Yeah, it's been tough.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your time and your service. Thank you.
Commissioner
Thank you,
Kleinfeld.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm just going to say one thing, because Julie and I have to be somewhere in 45 minutes, and it's all the way down in East Point. And I'm worried about that. But so we talked about all the needs and stuff. Let me throw out there what gives me heartburn. The office wants a grant writer. We have a grant that's running out, which is leaving you with, which means you're going to lose positions. Since the beginning of time, we've had this experience. Department gets a grant. They get positions because of the grant. The grant runs out. The positions aren't funded. They come to us and say, we need those positions. We hire a grant writer. We get all kinds of grants. We get all kinds of positions. The grants run out. The departments have become used to those positions. They come before us and say, we need you to fund these positions. We can't do without these people. It's the reason there are, like East Point turns down a grant for firefighters, because they know full well that in 2 years they got to lay those firefighters off because they don't have the money for it. But we don't think that way. We don't think that way here. And it's what has gotten us in trouble in the past. I'm just throwing the heartburn out there for you guys, because you're losing positions because you're losing a grant, and nobody came close to asking for the positions that you guys asked for last year, and you're coming again. And
I think
if every department did that, we could sign us off into bankruptcy right now. So I just throwing that out there. There's got to be the hesitation as well. And I see that.
I want to make sure she gets her questions answered. So I agree with you. I want to use the existing funds that are coming in, and Mr. Schmiegel's here, he knows the numbers that are coming in from DHHS to go fund those positions that we're going to have for Beth. And I want to take those funds also from my existing budget, once you award the budget, and utilize that for the $35,000, up to $35,000 for grant writing, okay? And other things that this man's been doing for 2 years. I came in here with no experience to do that budget. That man came over from Exalta, which was formerly DuPont. And I said, Dave, I need your help. And he gave me his help. But he also went out and he sought grants. And I realized when talking to Kim Worthy, when our meeting we had, and Emily Corwin, I hope I said her name right, down from Wayne County, she's down there in the Capitol bringing back $8.5 million. There's money out there in the justice systems. I just need somebody to focus on it and to make sure that the reports are done on time. David was doing that for me. So I want to use it from the existing dollars. I'm not asking for more money. I'm asking to use those existing dollars within my budget, and I'm also asking for the money that's coming in from DHHS, $250,000 a year, to take care of the staff coming here. That's where I'm using my money. A lot of this money is being generated right now, and I'm not able to use it. And I came here and I asked the board. I remember, I've got the money, it's sitting there. Let me get these people to help me out. I don't understand it if it was my own business. The money is there. I'm not utilizing extra dollars from the taxpayer. I'm doing exactly what you want me to do. But you got to help me. And that's why I'm coming here. So to your point, you're right. When it runs out, everybody wants to look for the county pocket, the taxpayers. I'm looking for me making the money from within to help me and to help these county people. Not taken from the taxpayer. It's there. It's there. If you look at the budget, it's there. And I
Okay.
just need the permission from you so that the executive branch and the finance branch says, no, he's allowed to use that money. Because that's what I was told.
Okay, and so I'm going to turn it over real quick. How many more speakers do we have?
Just one. This will be fairly quick, but this is one where you're going to want to see this number that Beth has. So
Okay, and Commissioner Van Sickle may still have questions for the other. I just,
He
I
does.
wanted to know because we're, two of us are in a pickle here.
And the
All
next
right,
top-
thank you.
The
Thank
next
you,
topic
Chair.
is child support to collection. And Beth.
One quick question. Commissioner Van Sickle for Kumar.
Thank you. Do the amount of staff or the lack of staff in the prosecutor's office impact the expediency of the courts in any way?
Yes, I mean,
In other words, might our citizens who are determined to be innocent be turned out of the jail quicker if you have more people working in the prosecutor's office?
yes, it benefits them because we have people to attend to every case as fast as possible.
So I'm not saying we would recuperate the funds that if we put more funds in the prosecutor's office, but if we have fewer inmates in jail, we do have a lower expense there.
Yes, and some of the technology that we've already done that Todd has instituted with the way the warrants are processed has already made that system go faster. So we're just trying to get more efficient to make sure that everyone is attended to, warrants are attended to, and all of these things are resolved faster so we don't have people sitting there longer than need be.
Okay, so we might serve our citizens better and recoup a little bit of money by doing this.
I mean, I think that process has already been started and already is happening, yes.
And just a comment about grant writers. If we did have a grant writer, maybe we'd be able to bring in more grants to year after year as opposed to letting them run out. Possibly. Not saying we would, but possibly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
May I, before we start, this is important again. To your point, we hired former prosecutors that could only work part-time. Denise Hart, who worked here and then at the Attorney General's office, as Kumar did down for Kim Worthy. We got him from Detroit, too. We also hired another prosecutor, Kathy Beard. She trained most of these individuals. We brought him in with already experience, and we said, when the grant's done, you're done. I'm trying to resurrect something to keep them here because I don't want to lose that experience. And to your point, Commissioner Van Sickle, when I watch a victim sit in a courtroom 3 hours because the APA is in the back room with the police officers trying to resolve a big deal, and the victim is sitting there 3 hours because the police come first to get him back on the road, that other APA is there talking to the victim. That's the only champion that victim sees in that courtroom, is that other prosecutor. And when that other prosecutor has to take leave because of a health issue, it could be a father or mother that's sick, that second chair is seamless because that victim has seen that second chair. There's what lies the importantness of the transition team. The experienced prosecutor, the less experienced, training them to be that prosecutor, getting the police out of there and getting them back into Roseville to put them on the street where they belong instead of waiting for the APA to finish the next case and the next case and the next case, and driving those traffics through those courts so those judges get off those benches and the staff keeps the well-oiled machine. They can see more cases, they can do better things, and the victims are better served. Thank you.
Commissioner Romano.
Sorry. I'm going back to this grant thing real quick, and I mean real quick. I understand where Commissioner Kleinfeld's coming from when we hire people through the grants, but these are people that acquire experience while we're getting free people through the grants, really. I mean, we're individually paying them, but we're getting free people. We're getting them knowledge. We're giving them the experience. Eventually, somebody from that department's either going to retire, attrition, whatever the case may be. What do? Go out and get somebody fresh? Or do we have these people that we've been utilizing with grants and say, hey, we've got a position for you now. And as Prosecutor Lucido said, he has the money. Let's get these people in transit. Let's put them in check for it say, hey, We've lost a person. You've been writing here for grant. We're using your money on grants. You've been getting paid with grants. Somebody left. We've got some money. We'd love to have you stay. You've got the experience. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a win-win for us. That's all I got. No more. I won't say more.
Okay, Todd.
Good evening. I'm Beth Naftali Kirshner. I am Chief of the Family Support Division, otherwise known as the Federal Cooperative Reimbursement Unit. I've been accused by many a court reporter of talking way too fast, so even though I have 3 slides, I will make it very quick.
We don't have a problem with that.
I do. I'm sorry. We are asking in my unit for 1 investigator and 2 senior office assistants to primarily work on felony non-support cases, to investigate and collect back child support. Currently, 1 APA, Ms. Shinneman, is looking at cases where people owe $5,000 roughly. She's collected $68,000 in back child support without having to prosecute anyone. She has also prosecuted 14 cases. She's currently working with 11 payors on payment plans to get money to the kids of Macomb County so that they otherwise would not have had. Currently, there are over 6,000 cases where $5,000 or more is owed to the children of Macomb County. We need additional staff to work these cases. Collections can increase with designated staff on them. We're looking at a ballpark of over $33 million that's owed to the children of Macomb County. I attended a conference where my counterpart in another state took his felony collections from $140,000, and by forming a unit with investigators and staff to be able to investigate to see what cases were ripe for repayment or what cases were ripe for prosecution, they ended up collecting over $1.4 million. So I'm asking with Prosecutor Lucido's support to get additional staff so that we can bring more money back to the kids of Macomb County.
Commissioner Hall.
Case.
We met with the Attorney General's office before we started this with Prosecutor Lucido's permission. They typically do cases of $10,000 or more. They also have extradition powers, so we work in conjunction with them. We try to get cases from our friend of the court. I've talked with Tom and Laura Keith, about referring us cases. Todd helped us develop a form on our website so that people can fill out if they seek, reimbursement of their back child support. We're trying to target the lower cases than the Attorney General because by the time somebody owes, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $80,000, the likelihood of getting payment is not great. If we can target those smaller amounts, it means a lot to a family to get part of that money back. And, Kim's gotten a lot back. She could probably address more about what you collected with different amounts and different people.
Well, and what I'm doing that's different than the Attorney General's office is they obviously have, more people working with them, staff-wise, investigators. They charge the people right away, man or woman, whoever owes the support. Whereas our approach here is we reach out, we contact the person, we try to work with them to see if we can resolve these issues without prosecution. And then if they won't cooperate, then we are going to charge them. So that's a little bit different than what the AG's office does.
Can you define the term I thought I heard you use with smaller cases? What would be a dollar amount equivalent of a smaller case?
So what we're typically looking at is anything owed $5,000 or more. We also will look at lower amounts in some instances where the monthly amount is extreme, like they haven't made a payment in a year. Because some cases come to us, say the person only owes $100 a month in child support. They could go years before they hit that $5,000 amount. But the mom still needs the money, or the dad still needs the money.
And you indicated you were trying to convince Tom to send you some of those cases. This is where, when Don and I met with him, it was like a big black hole. And he's trying to decide whether to send them to you. The Attorney General is deciding whether or not to get involved. And this whole process was taking 18 months when whoever owed who didn't pay. Then it falls on those that have relatives that can help. They're starving, they're evicted. That's ridiculous in this country today.
I agree with you. And part of the reason why we got involved in this situation is I came from private practice and starting to see how much money was owed out there and that the prosecutor's office wasn't actively pursuing it was one of the things that Prosecutor Lucido and I talked about before he even took office, that was one of my things that I really wanted to push for. Part of the problem is with the friend of the court, and I'm sure you guys know this, but they issue a bench warrant, a show cause. It's a civil remedy. Okay, so the person gets picked up on the warrant, they get released from jail, say they owe $7,000, they get released, the judge lets them go on a $100 bond. They pay the $100, they go and they flee again for another year. Most of the people that owe child support know that this is what's going to happen. They aren't afraid. They're not afraid because...
I don't think it's most, not to interrupt you, I think it's all.
Right. They're not afraid of being picked up. However, if they get picked up on one of my warrants, it's 25% that they have to post of what they owe. That's per statute. They have to post 25% on a felony non-support warrant to be released. It has to be cash. So even if that person flees and goes away, I'll give you one example. I had a bond that was $10,000. The gentleman posted cash immediately, pretty much the next day. Never seen him again. But I did get that $10,000 released to the mom, which is more than she had seen in probably, I think, 8 years, 10 years. I had another case 3 weeks ago. Person failed to appear. $6,000 went to the mom. So even if we are going through and prosecuting the individuals, eventually when they're picked up, the amount of money that they have to post to get out of jail, which is way more than the front of the court request, most of the people have been saving for a rainy day. They're not going to sit in jail. They're going to post it if they have to post it. And then even if they don't show up again, the mom is going to be getting, or dad, more money than they have gotten in probably years.
I agree with that. When we had our pre-meeting with Prosecutor Lucido, I asked the question, if this additional resource is granted, when you say when they get picked up, 99% of the time you know it and I know it, it's when they get pulled over for a traffic violation or commit another crime. Even when their residency is known, their workplace is known, nobody, and I'm telling you, I had a woman crying on my shoulder on Monday saying, nobody cares. And to me, that's intolerable. So is your office going to seek them out and pick them up, or wait until they get hit?
Well, sir, and we care. I'm going to let you know right now, we care, I care. This has been my
I
passion
bet.
since I've started working here. Part of the problem is the deficiency with the Macomb County Sheriff's Department. I can tell you that the friend of the court used to be assigned 2 enforcement officers, so they would actively go out and search and seek for the people that owed or had child support warrants, either mainly from friend of the court. However, I know now that they have been taken away from the front of the court.
Wayne County deputies are sworn officers with the prosecutors. They are sworn to go and do that work. They have a unit in the Wayne County Sheriff's Department that are under the prosecutors. The warrant goes out immediately, all the cases, and then they send the deputies out to arrest them. We don't have that here in Macomb. We don't have the resources in Macomb to do that. How Wayne County has it is beyond me.
Well, yeah, that's a bad comparison, Pete.
Unfortunately, this is the facts. These are the realities. If I had a unit with deputies to go get those individuals and lock them up, you're going to shake the trees. You're going to get something off the tree.
Well, not only do you get, and I don't want to belabor this, Joe, not only do you get something off the street, the reputation gets out that we're going to come get you. Yeah. Right now, we're a joke across the state, I guess, that these things can occur. I'm sorry, your name?
Beth.
Beth, you threw something up here that had $33 million on it. How do you get to that?
If you take the 6,750 cases and if you assume they only owe 5,000, that's the 33 million. But we have one case that popped up, they owed 80,000. So there's a lot of money out there. The problem is she's one person, and as I say, working at her lunch most of the time. So we can't get inundated with these right now either. So our friend of the court, is helping us. she's seeking them out by checking screens of what's a good case to maybe do repayment, what's a good case to prosecute, but she needs more help than just her during, her lunch, a couple times a week. So that's the problem too.
And this will be the last thing I say, Joe. Thank you for allowing me. You just hit what I was describing as the train. The amount of entities in government that are involved in this process, I don't want to say simplicity, in the process of collecting. Tom just said, I don't need any more resources, I'm doing fine. You just said, we need a referral from Tom. Pete just got up and said, after the warrant is issued, there has to be a unit in the sheriff's department or somebody to go out and get them. That's 4 entities before we even move to the Attorney General, the state, our own Treasurer Department, Finance. That's why this is, and Don and I both shook our heads and said, how do you fix it?
Well, not to contradict you, but we don't
That's a good thing.
we don't need friend of the court to refer the cases to us. Kim has become a good investigator for finding the cases based on kind of stalking the friend of the court show cause list. So she's getting her own cases. So we're not waiting for the friend of the court. The problem is, she's got a court she's got to handle and other things she has to do. So there's limited time that she can spend doing it. We don't need the AG's office. They said there's more than enough cases, and obviously with over 6,000, we're not stepping on any toes. We can do this without anyone else, and we are. It's just how much are we going to be able to do with one person doing it a couple of times a week?
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to Don's discussion about the specialty courts. There's going to be additional resources across the process, and even if we add, and don't think I'm opposed to it, buddy, even if we add resources to her, we're going to have Tony come right in here and say, I don't have the capability of going out collecting.
Just a second. I got an idea.
Quit.
Every one of you have a district. We showed you the statistics that we gave you all to show you how many counts are in your district. Now you can go back to the Roseville Police Department, you can go back to the Warren Police Department and ask, if we go get the warrant, would you send some of your people on the weekend when things might not be as busy to go pick them up?
The answer is no.
Why?
Because there is no such thing as when we don't have any time to not. You've seen, matter of fact, you've referenced Roseville 5 times tonight.
Well, the reason why I ask is because my mother-in-law lives there, and I know that they had that hoopla going on over there last weekend there with the shooting in the parking lot. But I'm trying to get to the heart of it, which is this. We can only do what's in our control. These individuals that are parents are owed this money. And it's an unfortunate event that we only have somebody working during lunch, and we do get 2/3 of the money from the state to do this kind of work. And I kept asking, all these felony warrants that should be out there, we can get it, the paperwork. We'll do the paperwork. We'll have an investigator know where they're going to be. And they go into areas where they know that they're going to get them. We just need people to pick them up. Once they pick them up, that's good. That's why Beth and Kim are working the best they can to resolve the issue, because if a guy knows he's got a warrant out for his arrest, or a mother knows he's got a warrant out, they'd rather resolve it, get the warrant set aside, and start on a payment plan to get something, to get a resolution. And it's an unfortunate event. These cases are old. The older they get, the mothers and the fathers don't get the money for the kids.
Right.
That's it.
I'm glad Pete brought that up, and it's something that you brought up as well, about money changing through 14 different hands before the mom even gets the money. That's something about the $68,000 that I've collected. That's an immediate money that went to mom. I talked to the defendant. We have discussions on a lump sum payment in the very beginning, whether it's $2,000 or whatever, and then continued money every month, which I've been monitoring. They take a special coupon down, they bring the cash, it goes right to mom. So we're not waiting for it to go to Lansing and be sent back and all that other stuff. It is an immediate thing by just even working with those individuals. Now, if I just charged everybody, I'd have triple the amount of cases, but I might wait years for them to get picked up. And by the time they get picked up, if they owe $60,000, $70,000, what am I going to? People aren't going to pay that.
Right.
Yeah, and the kids are probably aged out of the system at this point.
Commissioner,
so that was part of the theory of starting at a lesser amount.
I think we need to bring this to another committee and maybe have all the parties here and try and solve the problem, because just the prosecuting office is not going to solve it by themselves. But I appreciate what they're doing, and they're trying to solve the problem, but they need help. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. You're trying to solve a problem, but it doesn't seem to be a big priority. Because all the staff you got in the prosecutor's office, you're doing it at lunchtime. What does that say to the victims out there waiting for the money? I got one prosecutor sitting in the office doing it at her lunch hour. That's how much priority it is?
I will say this.
That doesn't sound very good.
Well, sir, can I answer your question
Please.
really quickly? We're a specialized unit. We're a granted position.
Unit sounds really like it's a big unit. Like it sounds bigger than it is. It's really just it's a shell. You got one person on it. You call it a unit. It's one person.
Actually, there's 5 APAs assigned to that unit.
Are you all working at lunch at the same time on it?
No, that's not the only thing we do, sir.
I know
we
you're
also
not.
establish the initial orders and paternity for all of Macomb County, all of our judges. We start every single child support case that comes from MDHHS, meaning that they're on some form of state of assistance. They start at the prosecutor's office. We have probably, 6,000 cases that come through that aren't felony, non-support related, that we do every year. So our staff handles that. We are each assigned a judge, and that's a couple thousand cases probably per prosecutor in our unit, on top of what I'm doing, and that's why I do it at lunch.
Well, first of all, you deserve to have a lunch and a lunch break. You don't deserve to be working all day long without a lunch break. I mean, that's just, everyone needs a break. So that's a management issue. It's a management issue. I mean, what do you got? You're forcing them to work lunch because you don't have...
Well, she's not forced to work lunch, but to your point, Commissioner, that she wants to do something.
Well, I know you're dedicated.
Right.
You're all dedicated for what you do. I got that. But it's a matter of priorities. You got lots. You could sit there and have to spend time prosecuting a murderer, or later sit in jail a little bit longer while you deal with families and kids and the other things that, that people that have hearts, people that need money from them. And it's interesting about the sheriff. First time I've ever heard that. I've been around here a long time. No one from the prosecutor's office whispered in my ear, said, guess what? They don't have the staff to go out there and collect. How about doing a weekend drive like I've seen in Wayne County? They go out and collect felons, or go out and do a push or a sweep for something like this.
And
This is another discussion for that. We're all off topic. I appreciate Mr. Chairman, but when I hear that an issue that Commissioner Hall and I are very concerned about, and everyone else is too once they heard about it, that you're spending lunch hour, going to get lunchtime attention to these cases is upsetting.
Well, sir, we knew how important this was, and we didn't have the adequate staff because of everything else we were doing, and because we're grant related, only certain people can see the screen that we can see that we share with front of the court. It's called MICES. So in order to even get this off the ground, we knew that I was going to have to do some extra time, which I was willing to do, and hopefully in the future we could get more positions that could help me out, and we could grow it to a unit like Beth was talking about, from collecting 140,000 to like 1 point something million for the people of Macomb County, which is well worth my lunch and several hours.
Well, it's managed, but you don't need. They need to manage that better.
I'm not starving.
That's not your decision. But God bless you for what you've been doing. I appreciate all of you. These aren't critical. I'm just saying I'm not criticizing any of you. I mean, just saying it's just a matter of priorities. How about we spend our time and money on? And it doesn't seem like this has been a very high priority for a variety of reasons. You can't go out and with no sense issuing warrants if you can't collect. But we'll get there. We'll figure it out.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Is wage garnishment still a tool in your toolbox?
Not at the front of the court it is. Right now, it's not something that I have access to just because we're just starting this. But front of the court does wage garnishment. And in fact, due to the pandemic, was able to collect way more money because of the payments from the unemployment. They were able to garnish partial of the first stimulus check, so they were able to do it that way. But they do wage garnishment. But a lot of the people that owe child support, we know they work under the table.
Okay. And I want to add my voice to Chair Brown. Thank you very much for spearheading this and for bringing this to our attention. And I guess I'm a little embarrassed collectively for the county for letting this kind of condition go on for so long. We need to do something. Thank you.
Commissioner
Thank you,
Zinner.
Chair.
There's none I'd like to say, but
Okay. I think we've got a consensus there that we have a problem that needs to be solved.
And that was it, Commissioner. So you can see great things are happening in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. Thanks to you. We're happy to answer questions you have or also provide follow-up.
I just want to dumb this down really quick, Todd, just so that we're clear here. I know Commissioner Matuzak asked this earlier, but we're going through numbers here and employees, and I got to get back to your presentation, to that slide.
I just brought it up too on the screen if you want.
It's not showing up on ours, but it's okay. 13. Okay, so general fund, 6.5 FTEs, 1.5 FTEs requested. That, the grant portion, the 2/3, what specific, as far as those three, which one is it that it's general fund specific?
The general fund is the 6.5, and I understand from Kyle, when he copied this over, you have a PDF version of this where the columns are aligned correctly, and on the one on the screen, regrettably, they are not. But let me do it this way. The grant general fund asks, so in order to get the 3 people that we talked about with Beth and Kim, that's 1/3 county funded, 2/3 grant. The 1/3 county match from the general fund would be $79,577.
Got it.
And that $79,000 would give us a total of then $234,000.
Last question. In your budget, page C51, your employee count went up by 1.
What that was to just, so we have a net +1 FTE as the recommendation from the finance department. What that was 2 things. One, they've recommended a net +1 part-time special prosecutor.
Okay.
And that was to help with the CESF grant that is ending, but we're still going to be down net 3 part-time prosecutors. The other +half came from a 1 part-time support staff. Where the 1 part-time support staff came from was addressing an issue where we had an orphaned employee for several years. For several years, there was 1 full-time position against which 3 part-time staff positions were assigned. And you really can't do that. If you're going to have a full-time position, you can assign 2 part-time people to it because half plus half equals 1. For several years, we had 3. I don't know how that happened. It originated before Pete took office. But what it was being used for is then unspent money in the salary budget was how it was covered. Working with the finance department, we wanted to address that on the books, so that's what's on the books is matching the reality. So since the reality was 3 part-time staff people, now the budget accurately reflects 3 part-time, and so that was a net increase then on the books of 1/2, even though it didn't change the reality of what was happening on the ground. So that's where 1 came from, but our ask is 6.5 out of the general fund, and then that additional for the grant.
Okay. We're going to zip through this really quick here, Commissioners. Any questions, page C 50 or 51 on the budget specifically to those pages? Seeing none, we're going to move to D13. Any specific questions on D13 related to federal forfeitures? I don't think that there would be. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Forfeitures D14.
What is the difference between those 2 accounts, Steve? Steve Schmiegel? How do you differentiate the 2 of them?
Different funding sources.
The state versus federal versus local?
The one is federal, and the other is a combination of the old OWI account plus the drug forfeiture, mainly drug forfeiture. Correct, Todd? I see the prosecutor left. But it's different funding source. The one on D13 is federal.
And is there a reason why we have to keep them separate? I mean, I'm just curious as to why they've been separate
Yeah, because
accounts.
the one in different funding sources. So the federal is a grant that has to be in its own fund, yeah. Different year ends. Well, no, they're both calendar year, and I stand correct.
They're both in a county account, right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Steve, can this year with the federal forfeiture one, I mean, it's going to end up with $113. Are you just anticipating that that's going to zero out?
I do.
this
I'll
year?
look into that.
Okay. Next is grants D43, D44. Steve, we're transferring in a little over $1 million there from general fund dollars specific to these grants on D43. Is that what we're
Yes,
funding?
just shy of 1.1 million, 1,097,700.
Okay, seeing no speakers on grants. C27, which is the district court witness fees. Seeing no questions there. Okay, I think we are through the prosecutor's budget. I think, I mean, as Commissioner Brown said, he's been doing this a number of years. I've been doing this a number of years, and I learned a few things tonight about the prosecutor's budget that I didn't even know. So, things obviously we need to determine how we can solve some of these problems. Obviously, it's going to be not solved tonight, but at least we're aware of them and we can work towards a solution. So, thank you from everyone in the prosecutor's office for being here. Almost to 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Chair?
We have a motion. Let's vote.
May I make a comment here? Would you please tell Prosecutor Lucido, we did give him all the time he wanted today. Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay. Kyle, did the vote come through?
Wait for it to pop up. Vote
Should-
passed 7-0.
7-0. Okay.
Missing
Still got
somebody.
that quorum. Next is public participation. This is the second opportunity for public participation. For anyone that would like to speak, a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Come to the podium. Any issue, 3 minutes.
Good evening, John Paul Hunt on behalf of the prosecutor's office. To Mr. Brown's comment, thanking the prosecutor's office for working through their lunch hour. As you can see with my size, I've been with the prosecutor's office 18 years and have not missed a lunch yet. So, but I thank you for your thanks to people like Kim Shinneman.
Okay.
All right.
Anyone else? Public participation. At least we're still smiling here, right? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Commissioner comments. I don't think there'll be any, and there aren't any. Next, motion to adjourn made by Romano, supported by Kraft. Please vote. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, finance.
For an excellent job.
Good job, Joe.
Great job, Joe.
Oh, about great. It was okay.
Oh.
Give him great.
We were talking to you.
Oh,
Motion passes 8-0.